Welcome to, what episode is it, Yanko? 44?
I know, man. You guys were doing the ones in Paris.
45? This is like the old way. Well, first of all, I guess is going to be someone we all love. Duncan, what's going on, my brother?
All right. Here's the thing. I'm replacing Chad at the request of Yanko because he didn't want to have another 45-minute ear beating about why Monte is going to be really awesome and beat FaZe or whatever the fuck that was. That was an abomination, mate. What the fuck was that episode? You should have cut him off, Mouz. You should have cut him off, mate.
Mate, I was sat there and I was like, I'm just letting this one play out. I can't believe it was 40 minutes long.
Because the thing is as well, yeah, not even like Yanko was feeding into it. He was just basically like, I'm not asked, mate. And Chad was like, no, you must argue science and reason with me about why Monte is better. Like, what a rubbish take.
I like how he was just so triggered by me not changing my POV, right? Like it was just, he couldn't really fathom my way of thinking. And then, of course, FaZe wins like with a bullshit comeback, 16-14.
I was going to say, tell me honestly, watching that game, did you get a little bit nervous? Were you just like, oh shit, this is going to be insufferable?
Yeah, I don't know. I think a little bit, but it was also FaZe. So I was like, I knew there was a good chance that they will just come back. If they win like 2 rounds, then all the pressure is on Monte and they might choke. I mean, you could see after the game was over, like SDY, his hands were literally shaking.
Yeah.
From all the adrenaline and everything. So turned out to be like, I don't know, I guess in that game I was right, but for the major, I guess it was Chad's.
Yeah, 50-50.
He got his upset.
Here's the thing. You got the opposite, you're right, Yanko, but like that's actually the part of that narrative that I thought was whack about the major is the two teams that the analysts all hyped, the underdogs, was 9 and fucking Monte. It wasn't Gamer Legion, Apex and Into the Breach, I'll tell you that right now. And especially like the Monte team, by that logic, they blew the easiest fucking quarterfinal of all time. They were supposed to win that one. Like if people don't know, they were the one online that was like playing 1 million tournaments and reckon everyone had like 75% win rate on every map and that. But it was actually all the no-namers like fucking Gamer Legion that won.
And that's wild because they go from completely stomping NAVI. I don't know what happened to NAVI in that one to then, losing in the quarterfinal.
Shitting the bed is, I believe, how we phrase it in America.
It was sad.
Yeah, it's wild. And for me, I mean, for 9, I watched them all. I did this brazy thing right before the major, and you watch them play, and they are really good on Vertigo. Right?
Sure.
But they couldn't win Ancient to save their lives. So what they did was they swapped their permaban Inferno for Ancient for the major. But that's the problem. In best of ones, people figured out like they're not going to obviously give them Vertigo or Nuke. They're pretty good on Nuke too. And then they're like good on Anubis, okay on Overpass. But they got Overpass first map, sort of choked it away a little bit against Liquid. I mean, they couldn't win any fights. And then all of a sudden, now you're 0-2 down and the road is like pretty hard. Like I think for them it was going to be matchup dependent, right? Like they 2-0'd Vitality at the RMR, but Vitality vetoes Ancient. So that was like the ideal map pool for 9. But I don't know, man. I feel like watching this major and like tweeting, I'd like to say that I got like a taste of what it's like for you every day, Duncan, when you interact.
Oh, people just hating on you.
With people, not just hating, but it's also like people just not really like understanding the argument, and they're arguing against something else, right? Like one of my favorite ones was when I just tweeted Vitality's playoff opponents, right?
Yeah,
that was the tweet. In itself, right? And then there's so many people.
Oh, and then I can already guess they were just like, how can you say that? Because they can already play the ones facing them, and you implying that this is a bad run. Like, oh, so you think they should have beat this? So G2 should have won. It's like, holy shit, I didn't say any of that, bro. Like, I just said the 3 teams they factually played.
Yeah, and that's like, and here is the argument. Here is like the twist, the whatever is the name for it. Is like, if that whole run of opponents, if there was nothing like, if it was like completely fine, then those people wouldn't feel the urge to tweet at me. They would just like, they just wouldn't reply to the tweet. It would just be there, right?
Yeah.
But because they know themselves, it's not like
exactly
proper. That's why they're jumping to defend it, right? Like if it was proper, you wouldn't jump to defend it in the first place. And I phrased the second tweet poorly, because I'm just like fucking. I'm not expecting a shitstorm to come my way, you know, based off of that tweet. I tweeted something along the lines of, you know, it kind of sucks for Vitality because I really consider them to be peaking right now, you know,
Sure.
like, and they would have had a legit something like that. I use the word legit, you know, sort of kind of making it like this was illegitimate, which it obviously isn't. I mean, they can only play whoever they can, but you know, saying that even if they faced FaZe or Heroic or G2, you know, they would be the favorites still. Navi, you know, like they would probably still have a good chance of winning that series. And then I said, like, now this will be like the easiest bracket in major history, you know, especially if you had like they played Monte in the best of 3.
Oh, by the way, by HLTV rankings, it is.
None of the teams that they played were in the top 30 before the major started. They weren't in the top 30. Like, that's just, you know, it's just ridiculous, right? But, you know, that's how it worked out for them. They're going to take that every day. They don't give a fuck. Like, they're just going to win those games, and that's fine. And then again, you know, oh, you're calling it easy. And now that's a little bit of a mind game for them. Is like, well, it's not easy because no major run is easy in itself, but comparative to other runs, it is the easiest, you know?
Oh, it's inarguable.
That was my way of explaining myself.
Here's the problem with that topic is, again, right, if we can't say it's like the worst major run or the easiest one, then no major run can be the best. No major run can be good. They're all just equally whatever. Like, the logic would go by their logic, right? In theory, according to them, it would actually be easier to play NAVI because they were sort of limping through the tournament in the round of 8. But everyone who knows Counter-Strike knows it's another day. NAVI might just wake up and completely spank your ass. Whereas actually the opposite could have happened. Like, these teams could all have shit the bed. They didn't actually. That's the craziest thing. If you actually look at the 3 teams that Vitality played, in the matches against Vitality, they all competed actually. It was pretty good.
Yeah.
But yeah, on paper, like you say, you would take that all day long. Like, if you were someone who hadn't won a major and someone said, do you want these 3 opponents? Even if you heard, yeah, they want some beer ones, they were good into it, you'd just say, yeah, of course. You wouldn't say, no, please, I want Heroic to make the final. Please have Team Liquid in the semis. Even though I agree with you, that would legitimize your run in the context of all the runs ever. But I know the point you're making about Twitter, though. Like, one, that's a fun game you can play if there's ever a fan base you want to trigger. So I do that, which is you only tweet facts, but ones like you're saying, Yanko. So I'll give you an example. I did that tweet where I just said, at the exact same age that Zewu is now, Simple did this at the majors. I just showed you like 2 finals, like 4 semis, like 8 quarters. Zewu has, at the time, 0 finals, 0 semis, and it was like 2 quarters or something. Now, I've said nothing there, Yanko. That is just a fact. There's no other way I can say the fact without lying. But because I've posted it, obviously they're all like, so you're saying he's not going to make it. So you're saying when he lost those matches, he couldn't. It's like, I haven't said any of that, but I am enjoying watching you fucking just go off. Like, it's like in England, you say, I just wound up the fucking, like, the key in your back and just let you go like a little toy soldier or whatever. But the other thing as well that they're doing there, Yanko, is I have a theory that goes, because these fans are just like a fan on the internet, I don't think they actually have people to have the convos they want to about the game with. So when they see anyone sort of vaguely on their timeline that, like, you don't even have to say the opinion. If you just sort of vaguely, tangentially talk about, like, the idea maybe Vitality an easy run, if they just want to go off about Vitality not having an easy run, so they're just waiting, and then they don't really try and understand your point. It's more like, right, this is my chance, and they just tag onto your shit and make it into something else, don't they?
But there's so many ludicrous takes, like what you said as well, man. It's like people are tweeting at me. They were saying like, yeah, well, you know, whatever, Gamer Legion and Apex like made it, and G2, for example, and Navi didn't. So those are tougher opponents for Vitality because they're playing better in this tournament. Like that's what people actually believed. They actually believed Vitality was going to have a tougher time against Into the Breach and Apex rather than Navi and G2 or Liquid or whoever it is, which is like so ludicrous. And you can't really get into it on Twitter, but I'll explain to you guys now why that premise is ludicrous. So yes, the favorites have lost. And also, by the way, fuck off with this thing where, oh yeah, these teams beat these good teams. No, actually, they had to play each other most of the time because of the seeding.
Yep.
Or maybe, you know, like Into the Breach beat FaZe in a best of 1 or something like that. And sure, G2 fucked up their own chances, losing the best of 3 to Fnatic, and probably could have won both best of 1s and whatnot, blah, 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 blah. But one of the reasons why these teams lose, or maybe the biggest reason why they lose to underdogs, is the pressure. The pressure gets to them, right? The pressure of losing to a tier 2 team, the pressure of not making it even into the playoffs, fucking up the last major in CSGO, and so on and so on. Well, imagine what? You get to the playoffs and you play against a team like Vitality when there's no really much pressure there, is it? Like, it's fine, you know, quote unquote, to lose to them. That's okay. That's not like a disaster. It's not a failure. And when you play without pressure or with less pressure, you're going to most likely play much better. So the outcome can potentially also be different. So that not to mention the experience of the players on stage, how much better some teams are on stage compared to, you know, playing in the studio environment and whatnot. So no one's going to ever convince me that Vitality would have had an easier time against, you know, G2, NAVI, despite all their issues and their problems than they had against Into the Breach, man, against, you know, some of the caliber of players that they've had who played great in this tournament. And that's why they were able to make the deep run, and props to them for that. You know, they've earned their way into it, but there's a reason why we didn't see them in other tournaments, you know, why we see these teams only at majors like Bad News Eagles or like Gamer Legion even. Like, you know, there's a lot of qualifiers. Even 9 made it into IEM Rio. So these teams like have opportunities to qualify, sure, not as many as maybe you would like, or maybe as many as they deserve, but...
Wait, did you say that you think G2 had more pressure in the or in the Legend stage than they would have had in the Champion stage in the playoffs?
I think it depends on who they play.
Is it based off like comfort of having faced off against like the Vitality so much? Is this like the idea of like...
Yeah, and also like being more, you know how the tier 1 teams always say they hate playing, you know, lower tier teams because, oh, they do this random, which is, that's a stupid excuse, because you need to know how to play against lower tier teams. There's a difference in the way you play them, which is why Heroic, ironically enough, until the fucking semifinal of the major, never really got upset by these teams.
Yeah, that was a fucking painful upset to watch. They fucking collapsed in that third map.
And that's it as well. Tell me, like, they played the day before, 2 days before against FaZe on Decider Mirage. And you're going to tell me that that was the same Heroic?
Bro, yeah, well, I mean...
No, of course not. But you have to be, if you're Gamer Legion, you have to take advantage of that, right? So it doesn't matter if they're playing shittier.
What you're saying there is the number one beef I have with, like, this abstract discussion about the major, like this discussion you're talking about of, was it actually that the tier 2 teams are as good or better than some of the tier 1 teams, mixed with, did the partner system shield these teams? Right, spoiler, there's no shielding G2 when they're at Katowice. They just spanked all the best teams in the world and wrecked them all, usually not losing a map. Like, the reason why that's such a whack take is because what you're actually saying is, I don't have an eye test. I have to just look at the result and hope the winner was better. Whereas, as Janko just said, watch Heroic in that Mirage Decider against FaZe, and that was almost the best Heroic you'll see. Like, Tessus had the game of his life, mate.
So did
every fucking headshot was straight clean, like instant winning of duels. Meanwhile, when you go and watch them in the game he's talking about against the Gamer Legion guys, you're seeing people just on the screen miss like easy shots. Like people like Stown have like, I think he had a map where he had like 8 kills or something. Like, you're seeing people just fall apart. Like, the eye test tells you they're not playing great CS. Like, the thing is, guys, when you see an amazing final, like when that NAVI FaZe IEM final at Cologne last year, that's 2 teams playing really high-level CS. Everyone's hitting crazy shots. It's like, if anything, you hit a crazy shot, I have to hit an even crazier one next round to one-up you. You can just tell when people are really playing well. Whereas I do think, actually, some of these were just let down by big teams. Now, look, then you can speculate things like what you're saying about style. Like, I actually do think there's another angle, though, I wanted to bring up and see what you think, which is the Into the Breach one is the one I cannot believe in. Because even though the Cypher guy had the tournament of his life and the stats were awesome on T-side, bro, they're not even good online. Like, I was even asking people, I had a look, they haven't even done anything online. They don't even like go deep in those CCT tournaments, mate, or win any qualifiers.
They just lost Eternal Fire like 2 days ago.
And then also, I actually had like Alan Hendra on my broadcast, who was like, he actually like coached Crucial and stuff. And he was saying like, bro, you never did any of this shit in the team when I was coaching him. It's like, mate, like we've seen, Crucial's not some new guy. We've seen him for 10 years. He was even in NRG in America, if you remember. So the mad thing about the Into the Breach one is I actually think that's a perfect example of what's possible on a Cinderella run. But the reason you call it a Cinderella run is it can't last. Because if you remember that game against FaZe, that's the one I always remember on Inferno. Bro, they just brutalized FaZe from the T side of Inferno. And if you go and look at games like that, mate, no one can do rushes like that at tier 1 because they don't work in the long run. But I tell you what, if you do it, Yanko, and you run past the utility and you just go straight, bum rush 4 people into like one CT's face, people don't do that at tier 1. They really don't play that style of Counter-Strike. You might send 2 people and then you hold one back and then you call him in. Like, no one does like essentially face it rushes. So the problem is I don't think long-term it can work. Like I saw it fall apart against Vitality, and eventually when it didn't work, they just did like normal tier 1. They walked into the sites and tried to flash people in and trade, and they're much worse at trading. They have worse players, so they couldn't win playing normal CS. So fair play. Like, look, if I am them, I actually think Thomas gave the best interview. He essentially admitted we're not even vaguely as good as them. So it'd be no point trying to play their game or we'd lose. Essentially, I have to try essentially like a haymaker or like a wild punch in a boxing analogy, because I can only really go for the knockout. Whereas in this analogy, like if you keep doing that, by the way, if you're a boxer, you might get some knockouts, but eventually you will just get absolutely fucked up, and you'll get some amazing defensive boxer. I'll just pick you apart and you'll never land a shot. So the real problem is like the others I could believe in, like the Immer guy on Game of Legion looks sick. The Isaac guy, I didn't even know he was that good, mate. He actually had like a tournament of his life. Apex even had some times where their players looked legit. They had good maps. The Into the Breach one to me, that just shows it. That was a one-off. Like, God bless them. It was fucking exciting, but I don't even think they thought that could continue. You could almost see it in their faces, man. Like, holy shit, are we doing this?
Well, they did exactly what you want like a Cinderella run and an underdog to do, right? Cause some exciting upsets, make an exciting storyline for the tournament, and then lose in the quarterfinals, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Like, 2 competitive maps, and then, yep, you're done. Bow out, baby. And that's exactly what you wanted.
I think also that interview was really great with Thomas, because you are spot on. Like, it's like, if you try to play that way, you lose. So you have to play in a way that gives you at least some chance to win. And they managed to catch a couple of teams off guard, and it worked for them, and it was eventually going to end. But it's the same thing for these tier 1 teams. Like, they need to be able to see that. Like, you're not going to play Vitality the same way you should play, Into the Breach or even Monte or Apex, right? Like, you need to be able to make that adjustment, because if you don't see that, if you're not aware of that, like, there's a real chance of you losing the game. But here's the thing. It's like, I even had people tweet at me. It's like, oh yeah, but Luminosity also started the same way, and everyone was hating it when they made the playoffs, and then they ended up winning the major, like 2 majors a year later or something like that. It's like, guys, please, like, you watched Luminosity play, you could tell that they were doing something different, right? Like, they were bringing this slow meta, like the patience in clutches, all this. There was something different about it.
Man advantage, etc. Yeah, they actually brought something to the game.
I don't remember any hate around that Luminosity when they started popping in.
And they also had like fucking 5-6 tournaments where they were making playoff runs and being in the final against Fnatic and losing to like Fnatic, the number 1 team in the world, or to NAVI, the number like 2-3 team. Like, they're losing to best teams in the world, and they're being competitive. And then like sort of the things opened up for them to win 2 major. Like, there's nothing revolutionary in the style of Into the Breach, Apex, or Game of Legion. Like, they're trying to play the way that tier 1 teams play, or Into the Breach, it's a little bit more different. And that's it. They were just better on the day against those teams and winning those games. Like, they're not revolutionizing stuff. They're not changing the meta completely. I'll give you the hate to
take. Here's the real hate to take, but I just believe it in my heart, so just deal with it. If I could just take the exact same field from this Legends stage and run it back at this next IEM, but with no major context, no like, hey, Niko, you're not going to win your last major. If it's just a normal tournament, a normal day in the office, bro, none of those teams are making the playoffs. They're just getting dusted off in the groups like they should. People like, look, 1 or 2 big teams could fail. But I sort of agree with you. The pressure on like the big dogs, essentially everyone who thought I could win this major, they're the ones who seemed the most vulnerable in the group stage.
I'll tell you, it's very simple. Like, Game of Legion is now 7 in ESL's ranking even. I think they're even higher in HLTV's. Apex is 11, 9 is 12, Monte is 16. Like, some of these teams will get invited even to Cologne, like to the play-in or to something, right? So we will see them at least at some tournaments in the future, and let's see what they can do. It's unfair to say the first time we see them they need to make a deep run or their shit. That's unfair. But you'll have 2 or 3 opportunities, and then show us, right? Like at the very least, you'll get the opportunity to play these challenger events, which are like DreamHack Opens back in the day. So you should be able to be in the playoffs there, maybe even win one of them, right? Like that's the field. That's what we expect from you. I don't expect them to come and win a tournament or be in the playoffs of Cologne, but let's see if they can win some games, if they can replicate what we saw at the major.
Who's the likeliest to repeat it? Of like Gamer Legion, Apex, Monte?
I would personally pick Apex.
I put Gamer Legion. Okay. Really?
I actually just thought, like, the thing I like about their team is I'm sort of cheating. Like, Jacob and Stickum, I already know how good they are, Stickum and Jacob. Like, they're actually legit players. Like, actually, Jacob underperformed in the playoffs, if people don't know. Like, he played much better. They both have their roles set. Nork, we just hadn't seen him on enough lands. He only played for Nip when it was the online era pretty much. So you never really got him a chance to blood him. He looked good against fucking Zimu on that Vitality series, mate.
I mean,
so
the only reason he lost his spot was because Device was coming
exactly.
In.
Even the GL guy, who I think is a bozo, look, he could definitely frag people. If you just put me in his crosshair, he'll frag him. The problem I have with the other teams is, like, into the Breach one, I just think that's just a miracle run. I can't believe in that. Monty has some fraggers, but they just don't seem like they're very smart about the game, if you know what I mean. Like, the Boris guy, his aim looks amazing, but man, he doesn't know how to, like, position and take fights. Like, he just seems like he relies on his aim. And the Gamer Legion guys, to me, the problem was they also had a really, like, weird run of people where they barely played anyone good until the semis and the final. So, like, in their team, I think that Imma guy just inevitably is going to get picked up by someone else. And once he's gone,
and Shui,
and once they're gone, the team's gone basically. The rest of them are just going to disappear, I'm afraid.
Yeah, I was talking to my brother the other day, and we were talking about some of those upsets, and it was just like, yeah, unfortunately, the nature of it is those teams are all going to be dead within like 6 months. Probably. It feels like they're going to be just cannibalized. Like, that's just how it works. Imma, Shui will get picked up. I wonder what's going to happen with Apex. They seem like perhaps the most resistant to splitting apart, but I have to imagine they will. Monty, like, I would be amazed if Boros isn't having fucking messages in his DMs.
Oh, he must be, surely.
Yeah, he's getting picked up by somebody.
By the way, that's also the sad thing. Listen, none of us hate the idea an underdog wins the game. We just don't like the idea it'll, like, spoil the tournament storylines. You won't get as much viewership, and you might end up, if they fail in the playoffs, with just a bad game. Like, actually, I'm sure we're all, like, mate, I'm a huge fan of the Imma guy after that fucking tournament. Like, I really believe if he didn't sort of crap the bed on the last half of the whole tournament, he would have stolen the MVP from Zimu. Like, he was playing unreal CS, mate. His series against Heroic, you have to go look it up. I think on T-side, he went 47 and 25 with a fucking AK against Heroic. Like, that's unbelievable shit.
Yeah,
like,
posted that.
You know, the best riflers in the world dream of a series like that at the major. So the problem is, to a fan, it's going to suck when those players, the good ones, leave, and you leave the ones that aren't going to make it behind, and the team disappears. But in a way, that is better for the game. Like, it's not really that these teams are better than G2. It's that they might have some players that should be on G2 or fucking ENCE, or you pick the team OG. It depends on what level you want to go to. Like, these, I want to see these players move into the big orgs, which, well, the viewership is and the money. By the way, great for those players as well. They're going to get paid. I think it's actually the natural way the scene should work.
Yeah, I guess the conversation becomes like, what was one of, like, the takeaways from the major was, like, there's I think it was Maui tweeted it out, or was it yeah, I think it was Maui who just said, like, there's no tier 2, there's just partner teams and non-partner teams now. I don't know how much of that I buy.
That was copium, I think.
I was sitting there reading that. I was like, it's kind of a cool line, but I don't know if I buy it all that much.
But it sounds like it was from the Mad Men marketing department.
Also, why is like when you talk about partner teams, is like people reference your G2, your FaZe, like those teams would be there anyway. Like, they would make the playoffs. And sure, I'll be the first one to say, if you make the whole tournament open qualifier, you won't see one of the top 5 teams.
Yeah,
like, if they
true.
have to play best of ones online to qualify for shit, like, they're gonna drop a map somewhere. One of them is just how things go in Counter-Strike. And also, there's a reason why you invite some of those teams. It's the best players. It's like the ones that attract the most viewers to buy tickets and also to watch online and all that sort of shit. But I can see, for example, teams like big teams like Fnatic, Evil Geniuses goes without saying, right? Are those the teams that I can see Gamer Legion beating in the best of 3? Yeah. I mean, and those are the teams that are probably, like, getting the most out of their partner slots in that sort of a sense. So, yeah, I don't have, like, I think it's going to, as I said, I don't think it's feasible to get rid of the partnerships and, like, just, cancel out those agreements because these organizations paid a good chunk of change to be a partner team and secure these slots. And also, the organizations like Blast and ESL are dependent on having those big names to draw the viewership and be able to maybe not lose a insane amount of money when running a tournament, right? So yeah, personally, I'd like to see more slots for like teams that can just qualify and come into them. But you could also see, man, like this tournament was also a good example of that. I didn't, it's like it was Monte Gamer Legion, right? And then semifinals was like Apex, Vitality. It's like these games, or in quarterfinal Liquid with Apex 2. It's like people didn't watch this. Like this major could have been the most highest viewed major ever, right? It's the only one this year. It's the last in CSGO. We are breaking like the concurrent players every week, it feels like. There would have been way more eyes on the games if there weren't as many upsets, but people just don't. And this is the thing. What also maybe some people don't understand. It's not that these teams are playing bad Counter-Strike and that's why people don't want to watch them. It's like they don't have the high-profile names like that people recognize. People come in 95%, I think, or even more of fans now. If I run into someone in Dallas and tell him, name me all 5 Into the Breach players without opening HLTV, I think 9 out of 10 can't do it.
No, they get like 2 or something, man.
Right? Like, and that's the problem. They're not really engaged in the storyline, especially when the 2 of those play each other. Like Monte Gamer Legion. Like, why would I watch this game? Dude, I'll tell you a reason why, though. If not,
one thing people are missing is this, Janko. It's like sports. One of the weird things about esports is we've designed the tournament. League of Legends does this, that you're supposed to just watch the whole thing. Like, no one supports any sport like that. You watch your teams and the ones you care about. So I'll guarantee there was people who didn't even watch Into the Breach till they did a couple of upsets. They were probably just like, I guess FaZe was playing shit. What the hell? What's just hence just shit the bed. I doubt they watched those games. Like that's why you're saying like they wouldn't be engaged with that. And let's be real, when you have 1 million people on a stream, I mean, probably 95% of those are just casuals, mate. They're people who play matchmaking. I don't even know that this podcast exists, or maybe they go on HLTV, but even then it's just
one day they will know.
Yeah, one day maybe. Also, by the way, one last point on that partner thing. Here's where that's actually a whack take. I'm just going to say it. It only applies to Blast, and that's because Blast only does 12 partner teams. And if they get unlucky, like they have a couple of years, sometimes some of the best teams in the world aren't in the partner system, or like really bad ones are. Like Cole goes off the boil and EG becomes shit. And like that can happen, right? That sucks. Right? How does this apply to ESL, who dominates 75% of the circuit? Like Janko said, for the big events like Katowice and Cologne, essentially, if you're like top 25 in the world, you attend the event, a minimum through the play-in, which can win games. So if you're actually good, that's why we know that FaZe and G2 are good, because they go through those tournaments and win. When actually, like you saw, dude, the Mongols did that when they were IHC. They came through the play-in, beat a bunch of big names. Furia. Does that mean they would have beaten G2 and FaZe? No, they went out after that. So I get him on the Blast one. I'm sort of with him on that. And Blast's in a tough spot because they're not the team, they're not the org with all the revenue. But for ESL, I think ESL has a really good compromise between the Louvre teams and the just bringing in the top ranked teams, right? And I think like if you're 24th, you get into the play-in.
Yeah, they do a good job for sure.
If you go back to like last 3 Katowice Colognes, there's at least 2 teams from the play-ins that are in the playoffs. Or
That's
something
cool.
like that, right? Which is like tells you, even though the play-ins are cutthroat as well. Yeah. When it comes to it, right?
There's usually an upset too.
Yeah, Furia didn't make it in Katowice. They lost to IHC.
That was IHC, I think. Yeah.
God, there's that. I'm actually, I don't know why. I know you're not surprised at all, Janko, but I'm so surprised at how far off the deep end Furia's gotten. That's actually crazy to me. How
I'm so scared about this conversation in case Janko, comments on the intelligence of the in-game leader or something. Obviously, all the strats are fine. By the way, Janko, how did you not do a Richard Lewis? How's my fucking T side today, dickhead? Like, guys, they didn't win a fucking T round the first 2 games
for 2 maps,
and then the third one they only won like 2 gun rounds or something. It's like, holy shit, bro! If you wanted to show Janko was stupid, you did a really bad job, mate. You stood on a rake and it went up in your own face.
It was like Furia and Liquid both came into the major like, hey, we've changed everything. We've revamped it all for the biggest event of the year. Yeah. And for Furia, you're like, please change back. Please, for the love of God, change it back.
No, but I mean, it's You know me, Duncan. I'm not a bad winner. You know.
Okay.
I've got class.
I wish I could say the same, but fair enough.
But it's that's the problem with Furia is like they did what they were supposed to do way too late. Like you don't do it actually that late. At that point, you're past the point of no return. You're just going to fuck things up for yourself, right? Like you can't start changing your style, a month before the biggest tournament. Like just, YOLO it, like stick with it. Maybe you get on a hot streak and you can make something happen. This was just sad. It was really sad watching them play. They can't win a T round on T side. Even Xerado is like not in a position to do almost anything, right? Like can't have any impact. They seem lost, like they don't know what they're doing. And I'll tell you, the same way that probably the top 4 in Rio sort of extended the timeline for that team from that result. Hopefully this will be the trigger to make some sweeping changes.
Well, it's weird because Brazil is like just caught in this like, I feel like they have that like weird, they must have that weird contract issue where they can't make changes. Like I would be like, between Pain and Furia, you could make a sick fucking Brazilian team. Between those two teams, you could probably make a team in Brazil.
You could make a banger Brazilian team,
but like, they've always been in that issue, even since like the old legendary lineups like Fallen and Cold Zero. They've always had that complaint that like, you can't actually make roster changes because buyouts are insane in Brazil. Like they'd be asking like $300,000 buyout for like a player who's never been to a LAN.
I'll make the same joke that we used to make about Navi when Simple would just keep re-signing when they weren't that good. It's like obviously part of the contract is that the owner gets an AK drop, doesn't he? Because that's the real problem. You can't really leave the team. Boys, I'll just tell you behind the scenes, I've heard from some of the other Brazilian teams when they're trying to pick up, especially from tier 2, like you get the player to agree, like unofficially, like you sort of poach him and he goes like, yeah, I'll tell them like to sign. And then they just call you up crying like, I can't go. And it's either some angle like you're being pressured by the org, or maybe they even guilt trip you like, hey, we made you, like you've only been here a year. Like I don't know how they do it. Cause as we're saying, like if you think of like America or Europe, dude, people just move for fun. Like if you pay enough for Spinx from Ents, they'll sell him. They know the game. But it is weird in those regions. It does seem like people are locked in. Because it was even the same with Fury when they came up. Like, I know Fallen and them wanted those players. They're not idiots. This all case around Yuri. They're like, this should be in our team, but you just couldn't get them.
Yeah, that's fucked up. Man, there could be such a cool Brazilian team. I hope the shakeup happens. I hope that there's a blow up in the Brazilian scene and they just make a fucking badass squad.
Yeah, but that's the problem. Is like it's more than a year now that they said that they need to remove art. For me, this wasn't a new thing. It was like a year ago during the Pro League season. I was like, until Furia gets rid of this guy, they're not going to do anything, right? And then people caught on to it like 6 months later and started sort of, saying the same thing and whatnot. For me, it wasn't like trying to get impressions or, have a hot take and then cause some drama. It's just like I really believed he was holding the team back. I still believe he's holding the team back, right? But nowadays you just have I don't know, I feel a lot of people are just trying to be edgy, like they're trying to say fiery things for the sake of saying them, even though they don't have as much root.
Wow,
in
Duncan, do you feel personally attacked or what?
No, here's the thing.
Duncan was at this. Duncan was like, that's like the gap that's left, really, that people are trying to film. But Duncan Duncan, and he wasn't like, he actually believes.
I believe all the takes I say.
And also, actually, he's way more edgy on Twitter than he is on the desk.
Oh, of course,
for sure.
On desk, he has like normal, measured opinion.
I'm a bit more eloquent as well.
Like for example, like. Yeah, a lot more eloquent. But for example, I don't think Duncan would ever like use the post game of Heroic Gamer Legion to like shit on Cadians like or whatever. Like
that wasn't that bad.
Choose that timing to make that point. I think the point is like, okay, if you want to make it, just the timing of it is like the game is just over, right? Like if you're making that point at that time, you're probably like in the back of your head know that it's going to stir up a bit of a not a shitstorm, but it's going to cause some controversy.
He's taking shots. Yeah, he's taking a chance. He's seeing if it lands. By the way, here's the thing. I'll even give everyone, because I think it's funny, but this will seem like it's playing into my enemy's hands. You know that thing where Skip Bayless always finds a way that like LeBron like failed and like he wasn't as good as people say and stuff, right? The thing is, I actually saw a podcast where Shannon Sharp, the guy on that show with him, went on, I think it was like All the Smoke or something, and he even said, oh, he's not joking about any of that, like he actually thinks LeBron's not that good. Like he's not trolling you. He's not saying it to make you mad. That's Ziwu to me. Because the problem I have is this. I know it sounds mad because he's obviously exceptionally good. But one, everyone else is telling me he's as good or better than Simple. Well, you've already fucked yourself there, mate. Because that is the most insane eye test player to ever play this game. And he's done it all. He's done it at every level, against every team, even Prime Astralis. He's been in fight. He's done it. So the problem with the Ziwu one is, quite frankly, he still hasn't done it in the big prestige tournament. He did that ESL Cologne 2019. He was a banger. The other ones, you can go and look. The numbers drop off, the performance drop. Even in this major, mate, even though they were playing all those teams that are low ranked, dude, every series he took a while to wake up. He'd have halves where he was losing duels to Nork, or fucking Cypher was fragging him when he was on CT side. Dude, how does Ziwu lose the duel like that? On the normal game, I don't think that happens. So I do think pressure gets to him. I think I still think he has. I mean, he hasn't really always had the teams to go that far, but even so, like, this is why you don't compare yourself to Simple. If we're just talking about not Simple, and I'm comparing to the case Serato and Shiro, now we can have a great convo. Maybe he's better than them all. Yeah, he might be the player of the year. So in that one, people think I say that just to piss off French fans or Ziwu fans. I really believe it. Like, I still need to see more. I do think he could be the greatest player ever, but he hasn't done it yet for me.
I think the problem is also, we had this conversation at Pro League this season, right? We're sitting there, and I said, for me, like, I don't know how I phrase it exactly, but I said, like, kind of, Ziwu is the most disappointing best player in the world that we've had. I said it something like that, because when you look at other people who are number one, obviously Simple, right? But even guys like Cold Zera, when he was number one in the world, he was incredible, right? And it's big games, it's clutch moments,
absolutely.
It's winning big games for his team. Olaf Meister, same thing. Get right at the start, same thing, right? And you didn't get that feeling with Ziwu, like whether it's that killer instinct or whatever.
He misses the attitude. And
funnily enough, like, we get into the thing, with Zonic is there and Apex is there, and they're kind of saying the same thing almost, where they do want them to, like, have a little bit of an ego and dictate stuff a little bit more, and then they praised him because that's what he started doing and was doing more of it at the major. And wow, surprise, all of a sudden they're playing much better and winning all games.
I actually have a theory about that. Moses might have heard this before. The real problem is this. Anytime you play a team sport or game, normally anyone who's really skilled has exactly the opposite problem of what you're saying, Yanko. They actually, look, I'll just use the example. You don't have to agree. People like Woxic are like this. Like, they are only going to play like they are the best player in the world, even if they're playing like shit and actually they don't feel the game. So actually, that becomes selfish at that point in time. And what you do as a coach and teammates is your whole, like, way of talking to them is sort of like, remember, it's a team concept. Like, let's sacrifice for each other. Like, sometimes let someone else carry. The problem becomes, since we all talk that way, when Ziwu comes along, we all praise him. Like, wow, look, he doesn't AWP sometimes on T-side. He just goes on the AKs because he knows, like, he should do some of the entry duties. And it's like, that's all well and good. But in some ways, I do want him to sometimes be a diva. Like, there's times I think he could take over games, or he just sort of lets the game come to him. I have the same problem with Stown from Heroic. Fades in the big games. He'll just here's the thing. Simple would do moves that if he fails, you look like a moron and you die. But I'll tell you what, it just means that when he does it and it works, he's unbeatable. You can't play him. And if you're an opponent, it's a nightmare. He can push you anytime. He can go for any retake. He'll go for a 1v3 when he has an AWP and not save it. And he might fucking win it. And that, by the way, not only do they have the ability to do that, but I think when you do that, it's like being someone who's really aggressive in poker. Just the threat of what you're doing makes the opponent play differently. Like, people start to, dude, when people used to see Simple's name in the obituaries, killing their teammates in a 1v3, they start shitting themselves. That's real. Like, Ziwu's amazing too, but sometimes I feel like he'll just let the game come at his pace, whereas I think you've got to go hard sometimes.
It's the great fucking, I guess, is it, I don't even know if it's irony. It's the great irony of that like 1v4 clutch he had against G2 is he never goes for that if it's not the last round of the half.
No, exactly. By the way, that round for real is probably the real round that fucking put G2 up shit's creek. They could have won that game, but he totally stole that entire round. That was basically the map, Moses, you're right. That 1v4 should never happen, but it was godlike. Everything about it was fucking, that'd be hard as shit.
If that's round 14, he doesn't even come close to that upper
No, you just save as well, or you get a kill and exit, exactly. Yeah.
But those are like the retakes we used to see some of the best stoppers actually go for, which they just don't happen anymore. I mean, for good reason. But I don't know. I had a conversation at the major with one of the coaches of one of the upset teams, and he was really, really like sad about like this whole like odds-based Counter-Strike thing, because it's just like just like the boring style of it. Like the nice thing about the upset teams, I will say, we touched on this earlier, the thing that they're coming in and throwing haymakers is that's exciting to watch to like a certain extent, right? And we don't get those kinds of stylistic things because all the top teams now play like the more odds based, the right decision, and there's beauty in that, and there's smart play in that. But we miss that kind of old school feeling of Counter-Strike that we used to get, where it was just like, you're going for shit. You're actually challenging. You're actually fighting. You're getting in people's faces. And I think there's a certain truth to the fact that we're missing that element in top Counter-Strike today. I think probably the economy is the biggest culprit. The biggest reason.
Well, for some weird reason in Counter-Strike, people really will like always think they should save in a numbers deficit, but I even think some of them are wrong. Like if, for example, in the next round, you're going to save like 2 rifles, but your teammate's going to have an MP9, a FAMAS, and no utility. What if in this 2v3, it's your 2 best players and actually like one of their players has had damage done or something? You might just go for that. For the game, that might be a better chance to win. I also think as well, to go back to the idea that you have to be a bit selfish, people want to believe in Counter-Strike that all 5 players are equal. Nobody's got a big ego. We're all just, we win as a team, we lose as a team. As analysts, guys, if you see Furia in a 2v3, but the 2 is like safe and drop, that's less likely they're going to win than if it's Yuri and Keserato. So I also want teams to be a bit sort of selfish like that. Like, you know what? If you're Keserato and Euro, go for it, mate. You could probably win it. You could outskill these guys. But I think teams sometimes they just have like a protocol of like, we always save like this. And especially the AWP. By the way, the number one that kills me it's what G2 used to do back with Smiths. If you've got Smiths as your AWPer, you don't save the AWP, motherfucker. That's not because I'm saving the AWP for Simplus or Ziwu, I'm not saving it for you. Like, you aren't going to win me the round on its own. Like there was a round, in fact, Game Legion had in the final against Vitality where they won on T side with 1 AWP and some pistols because Acor had the AWP, right? He was having a good game. That's an example of where you could maybe save the AWP. If you have an AWP that's kind of like a passive AWPer or just the old dreaded support AWP, don't bother. Like, that AWP isn't as valuable as you think.
Yeah, I think the problem is also like the economy, the way it is, right? It's just like not worth it. You can go and watch that Rio semifinal, Cloud9 versus Vitality on Vertigo, and you can see like the reason they came back was because Cloud9 notorious for saving, and Shiro and all of that really were going for a lot of those retakes because they were winnable in theory, like they were 3v3s and everything, but they just could never get every single one, and then they didn't get as many gun rounds as they could have. And you can also see Liquid, like in their game against Heroic, in the 2-0 game, like on both in Inferno and Ancient, like the 2 maps that they lost, they had criminal mismanagement of the economy.
Buys,
because they would do this thing in the end where they're like buying, when they're force buying, when their opponent has 13 rounds, right? It was a shit buy. So then they have 14. So then they either eco on 14 and concede match point, or they just buy 2 more times. And then they end the game like with 3 shittier buys. Like you never really want to do that. And it happened on both Inferno and Ancient. So yeah, I think for that it has to be maybe some tweaking or something to incentivize going for it a little bit more. But
there's another angle to that as well, which is It's a bit. It's one of the reasons I always hated James' game is because I can see the cogs turning before he even gets to the save scenario of like, I'm just sort of going to back off on this AWP angle. Then I'm going to do a fadeaway AWP angle off that one I miss. And then suddenly I'm in spawn. And you know what? They've got the site, the bomb's down, the smoke's in. May as well save now, lads. It's like, mate, you wanted to save this fucking gun. What? Like, I think sometimes there are certain maps. The old classic one was Dust 2 on B site. There's sometimes you have to just go for the guy flattening the bomb and sort of aggressively retake. Dude, Carrigan does it all the time on like Inferno B site. I think sometimes it's better to just gamble to go for the bomb planter than let them put the smoke down and then decide to save. You sort of made it an impossible round there, you know.
Go to the Cloud9 Vitality game again, but on Inferno. And Cloud9 beat them on Inferno because of that. The team that's notorious for playing slow, passive retakes. They were just like flashing themselves through smokes aggressively and catching Vitality off guard and winning some of those rounds. So yeah, it's absolutely like it can be a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, you can always find the counterexample, I guess, too, because if you go to the Heroic Gamer Legion Inferno game, like, you know, Cadian tried to do just that in like
That's
round
true.
29.
Surround that mid, Maui flame him. Yeah, exactly.
Probably did. I was casting that, and even I in my head was like, oh no, Cadian, what the fuck, man?
Unfortunately, it was almost the only way you could lose by going for that play like that, wasn't it?
I know. And sometimes you just can't hold back.
By the way, though, what we're essentially getting at here, the more abstract point is this, is there is no perfect way to play Counter-Strike. Like I always used to say back in the day, you know, when people were like, Astralis has the best way to play. It's like, first of all, that clearly isn't true because Zonic took that style to Vitality and banged his head against the wall for a whole year and it didn't work. And secondly, you have to have the personnel. Like, the joke is, I agree with what we were saying earlier about Furia. I probably would have thought the same thing as well. Like, oh, art style's just total bullshit, isn't it? What's he doing? Like, this is real Counter-Strike. So he tried at this major to play real European Counter-Strike and it looked actually terrible. And it really was like, no, actually go back. Like, you know what? Like, it wasn't perfect, but it was better than this.
Yeah, but also like it was such a weird time to make that change too, because even talking to them, it's like they had a week boot camp in Europe before the major. I'm like, a week? You guys think you can just bring in this new style with a week heading into the major? Like that's insanity. That's like, I think I would say that's mismanagement, but I think it has to just be like desperation of feeling like no matter what, you're fucked. So why not throw the Hail Mary out there?
Yeah. Dead now, of course.
Dead now, of course. Don't have to talk about Furia.
Yeah, but I mean, all in all, for the major, I guess, yeah, it sucks that we didn't get some more tier 1 teams because of the hype and the storylines. We'll see what happens with these, you know, Apex's Gamer Legions, whether they will be a mainstay or, spoiler, they won't. Tournament.
Not really much of a prediction, fair enough.
Yeah,
dude, Yanko's bedtime stories would be shit, wouldn't they? And then maybe they lived happily ever after. Spoiler, probably didn't. Probably died in the next story. Yeah.
But you know, as
you want to know?
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like the kind of one of the funnier things to me about the whole playoff bracket at the major is that no one of all the upsets and everything that's occurred, like the one that nobody references because I think we've all just come to expect it is Liquid losing in the quarterfinals. Like they've gotten away with like not getting criticized too heavily. Like no one really pointed the spotlight on them.
For me, the spotlight is never on them because they're not good. Right, they were frauds from the start. Right, they had a couple of good results. You know, the final against Vitality at that Pro League season. Yeah. Top 4 now in Katowice, and I don't know, probably
they had a blast one as well. They had top 4 or something.
Yeah, something like that. Right, and then you're thinking, oh well, maybe Liquid isn't that bad, but it was always like by the skin of their teeth. You know, it was always like sort of some individual performances. It was they never had like a convincing map pool, like a signature map. At the very beginning, it looked like it was Mirage. Nowadays, you have no idea, like almost what it is for them. So yeah, for me, like I didn't expect them to lose to Apex, but I expected Vitality to make quick work of them in the semifinal.
By the way, I actually thought the best actual memory I'm going to have of the major isn't even any of the storylines. It's just Apex saying in that interview, like, everyone criticised me for 1 year as IGL, fuck you all.
So
like,
good.
That's sick. By the way, even though essentially he's sort of saying fuck me, because I've said maybe you should be replaced. That is the best way you can answer a critic ever. Because you know what this, guys, the thing I hate about pro players is they'll talk shit like you don't even know what you're talking about, then lose the next game. It's like, well, can I get some credit? Like I said that. Because the worst one ever I've always said is, you know, in the bar after the fucking tournament or after their match, when they go like, what the hell? We won, and it turns out you picked the other team. It's like, bro, we never have this conversation the other way around. I don't get to come up to you when you blow the fucking quarterfinal, and I say you're going to win and go, what the fuck happened? Like, they'd be like, who the fuck are you? You're not in my team. It's like, yeah, exactly. There's got to be fucking quid pro quo on this, boys. Because that is sick, I can't lie.
I love that line.
Even though, you know, like, we were justified, like, they were playing differently back then. They hadn't activated Spinx, but still, in a movie, that's a fucking banger line, man. That was sick.
I mean, that's the beauty of it is like, I don't even think the people who criticize him like over the past, 2.5, 3 years that he's been in-game leading, depending on how far back he wants to go with that line, I don't think it was even wrong to criticize it and to call for his head at certain points, but I appreciated him fucking dropping the mic on that one. Yo, you got to say as well, shout out to fucking Spinx, right? Like, dude, to think about the balls, like when Enz was on that pop off and started having those good results, and to bail out and go to Vitality and have it work out like this, like that's fucking sweet. That takes guts to make that move.
He also showed me, though, that, like, there's actually a point Kassad said. I don't know if you've heard this, like, rant before, Yanko, but Kassad thinks that a flaw that we have as analysts, I think it's a great point, actually, is whenever we see someone with really good aim, we say he's, like, a really top player or, like, a skilled player or so. But he says you should just say they've got really sharp aim. Like, they might not have any other qualities to their game, or they haven't developed, or they haven't got experience, or they can only play a set way. And actually, what I learned was from the Spinx one, because in Ents, well, I'm not in the team. I don't know how they're setting him up or what the comms are or what they told him to do. In Ents, it just looked like, mate, this is like the next God Rifle. He's fucking sick. Get him on Vitality. Well, what you found was, as far as I can tell, they just went back to how he played in Ents recently and gave him a bunch of the same lurk spots and played like 4-1s and stuff out the spawn. Like, mate, it actually looked like essentially he's really good in certain contexts. And then if you put him in that, he's really good. But it's not the same as being like some of these, like Niko could play like 5 different roles in the game or something, or 2 or 3 different CT spots. So I do think sometimes we almost like are in a rush to put these guys at the level of the Nikos of the world, the absolute top of the top.
I think even like a god tier #1 in-game leader Apex, new to the crown, even like before the major, I think he gave like a really good interview on that where he said something like he was like we're starting to like Spinx is starting to figure it out, because when he was in Ents, they were like the way that they played and called, like Snappy is so crazy with all of his rushes and like his Mac 10s leading the way and is really aggressive. He was like, Spinx got so much room to work with because they were so fucking crazy and they were so chaotic that it shifted the map a ton, and we don't play like that. So it took time for Spinx to like kind of understand how they want to work the map and understand where he gets to pick and choose his fights in those same roles. So I mean that to me is like a perfect microcosm of how Spinx had to develop. And I thought that was a sick point from Apex and wherever the fuck he gave that
also
interview.
By the way, even though, since we're just pointing out that we were sort of justified, so we are sort of like just taking his great statement and then saying why it's sort of not totally right. Here's another reason why. Because Apex, right? I remember he also gave the interview afterwards that he tried to play fast on the map, you know, like the old French teams, etc. It's like, I get the idea of the team play like that. But one of my biggest fears when I watch Vitality play is anytime Apex on like CT just goes for some like push on his own. It's like every time that happens, that's like fucking arse clench time. Be like, oh, bloody hell. And the thing is, he loves doing those plays. So look, fair play if you win. If you win, I can't criticize you, but I still get really scared by how he plays individually.
Yeah, I think it was Hooksy at Pro League who was saying, like, when he was casting, I think he was casting the Vitality Ends game with a couple of guys, and he's saying, like, you know, people really criticize Art a lot, and like, you know, when he dies, like, how he plays, and you know how he maybe is a liability for Furia, but no one talks about Apex. He does the exact same thing, pretty much, like on the server, like, and it was after that Pro League tournament where he sort of toned it down a little bit. I vividly remember that Ends game on Vertigo, and he's playing, you know, Gap. It's just like overly aggressive, like over peaking, like searching for fights where you don't need to, and it cost them the series. So, you know, some fine tuning. I think here's the thing about Vitality, man, and why Rio was also important for them to win and to have that. They had a couple of great comeback wins in that one. I think it did give them. I mean, I don't think. They said it gave them some extra confidence. You know, Dupree said it in an interview, especially that performance he had against Cloud9 in the comeback, right? I think it really gave them like the small boost that they needed before Paris. And here's the thing, what they managed to do was what they were saying for the past like 6 months. You know, it's Paris, it's Paris, it's Paris. And that can be too much pressure sometimes too, but they really managed to peak at the right moment. You know, like they were timing it. Like, you know, they had those disaster losses, you know, the liquid loss on overpass. It happened in Katowice. It didn't happen in Paris. You know, some shit loss Pro League to end happened at Pro League. Didn't happen at the major. So they really like were able to just figure it out just in time for it all to come together on home soil. And that's not easy. And then that's a shout out to, you know, the whole coaching staff that they have, you know, and Zonic and the Lars guy and the manager and the assistant coach Matt. And I even saw that Xtaz was even involved like this year in some capacity. So they really did go sort of all in on the preparation and kind of getting it there, and it paid off.
By the way, sure, even though it's hard to criticize them because they play great CS, how sad was the fucking heroic end to this tournament though?
Oh, it's so bad.
Oh, it's depressing, isn't it? It's just depressing.
Yeah. Like they just have some sort of a problem when it comes to these big games. And here's that heroic is a perfect example of my point before about the pressure of playing like weaker opponents as well. You know, when you're supposed to beat them, like they played completely different. You could see like in the FaZe game compared to the Gamer Legion game, right? Like especially guys like Tessis and Shush, you know, who were the deciding factor. Like them stepping up is something that you don't really expect as much, and they were the difference makers. And then, you know, you go a little bit missing in that series. That's because of that pressure, sort of, oh, you know, we just beat like the hardest opponent in our bracket. Are we really losing to these guys? Like, is this really happening? You start having those thoughts. But you know, it has been a really long record now of them sort of not even making it a fight in some of the, whether you're talking about the grand final in, you know, Rio, or the grand final in Katowice, or the grand final in Rio against outsiders, right? Like it's just completely disappearing, and you can't really have that happen, you know. So
I mean, look, we all know this,
something about it.
Like sports teams, you have a window. And they've now busted 2 chances to win a major, real chances. Like the Outsiders one was right there on the table. They should at least have been in the final here. Like, you know this, mate. Like, you don't get 10 chances at the major where you could really win. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think we'll see how it turns out. But especially over the past couple of years, you know, especially after I've coached MIBR and FaZe, you know, with like veteran players, legendary players and everything, it's like, that really becomes apparent in playoffs and in big games, you know? And for Heroic, it seemed like Stone, like in the quarterfinal, he finally had like a good important series on stage in the playoffs, and it seems like it was all coming together, and he's taking like the next step, or Yabi as well, maybe, you know, and then that sort of doesn't happen yet again, right? And Vitality, they have Zaivu, FaZe has everyone. Navi has
Gamer Legion has Ema.
Simple. Yeah. I mean, so that's the thing. Like, and that's why I fucking hate what G2 did in the veto. I fucking
hate it.
Here we go.
Because it's so mental when you have players like Niko, first and foremost Niko, and then also Hunter, JKS, right? Like, you just had a historic run on Nuke at the start of the year. You have that map in front of you. You have a veto in which you can get your 2 best maps.
You would have beat Vitality on Nuke if you didn't have 5 fucking bang-up mistake rounds.
Yeah, that as well. So, and you decide to go for Vertigo, like historically like a terrible map also for Niko, right? And some of your best players. And it's not just that it's one of the best players, it's one of your most experienced players on you know, in big games and whatever. You always want to put the game in their hands, right? Like give him a map where he can do something for you, right? Where he can make a real difference. I mean, Niko Nyard is one of the best players in the position in the world. JKS is super solid on ramp. Hunter, you remember that heroic game in the grand final on Nuke, had a couple of amazing, like you can go down the line and think about pretty much everyone having like great games and great moments, not to mention like how much it impacts the confidence of the players. You know, in that game against Vitality, they were 7-0 down, and Vitality had like 13K in the bank across the board. Like, that's getting 2 rounds in that half is like sort of almost a win. And they managed to get more than that and bring it back and, had a real chance to win the game. If, let's say, they were down 7-0 to Vitality on Vertigo and Vitality had that much money in the back, the game would have ended 16-5 for Vitality, without a doubt. And what hurts me, what pisses me off the most is the fact that if this happened just this time, I would have been like, hey, it's a mistake, they fucked it up, but you only make that mistake once. They already made that mistake at Pro League. They played against Ants and they didn't pick Nuke, they picked Ancient.
Yep.
And Ants' permaban was Inferno, so they couldn't have picked that. And you lost, right? And you got eliminated in the playoffs. That was the first tournament after Katowice, right? So you would think that they've learned, okay, listen, let's just fucking pick our map that we are good on. Doesn't matter if that's also their best map. Who the fuck cares? Because G2 isn't a team like, for example, Vitality. They like to punish the opponent's weakness, and that's the approach for them and their veto from day one. FaZe, maybe something in between. But G2 is a team that needs to pick Inferno or Nuke, most likely, right? And they need to make their bread on those maps, and then we'll see on the other maps which ones turn out to be decent, that they can win a best of 3 series. But if you can get those two, you have to play them, right? And it ended up costing them their life at the major. But it's just such a, I don't know if it was Hook Seymour or the coach. I'd imagine it was more the in-game year in that.
I have a question for you, Janko. As someone who was, Mouz was a coach as well. You can both answer this. One of the things that as an outsider who's just watching the demos and watching the official matches and doesn't know what's going on in scrims, the reason why I always got infuriated with vetoes is exactly that. I feel like players, it's not even that they're bad on the map. It's not that they lost 5 times in a row on it. It's just they get this one key loss that is it's like a superstition. It just gets in their head. And if they even think of picking the map or playing it, they just think but you remember what happened last time? And it's bro, first of all, every game has probability. It can end differently. And then to me, the reason, let's be real, this G2 is just fundamentally good on Nuke. It fits your profile as a team. So my logic would even be, guys, if we can't win on Nuke against this team, we're not going to win the fucking major anyway. So let's just go out on our strength.
Yeah, I think the problem was they expected maybe Fnatic to pick the map, right? So they did a lot of prep on it.
Right.
And then they trusted their prep on the map. And you also have to remember the vetoes are not done so far ahead at the major as they are at normal tournaments, right? Because you do it through the client, in-game client, right? And all of that stuff. So I think, or at least that's how it used to be. I don't know if that changed, but I think that's how it still is. So, you're did so much prep and you feel like you have a good way of playing them and you just trust that over going in a map that you maybe didn't think you were going to have in the pool, right? But that's a mistake. That way of thinking when you have Niko, JKS, Monacy, Hunter is a mistake. When you have the opportunity to play the map that you had, 20 maps in a row, 18 maps, I don't know how many it was, that's a mistake because you cannot underestimate the comfort level and the confidence level of players on that map. No matter the score, they will believe that they can still win. Until it hits 16, they believe that they can come back and win the game because they've done it numerous times. They've done it. It's not like all their Nuke wins were blowouts and playing from ahead. So I think that's hopefully the last time they make that sort of a mistake, because it was a grave mistake. They would go, I think they would go actually into NAVI if they beat Fnatic, but G2 hasn't lost to NAVI in I don't know. They beat them in 4 straight best of 3s in a month. I was actually fine with that in the end. I don't think they would get into the breach. I think that would have been then FaZe in that case or whatever. But, I was really feeling still okay when they were 0-2, because I feel in a best of 3, they can beat any team. They're one of the favorites to win the major. And in the end, it didn't really turn out. You can't lose to Fnatic. You can't get eliminated by fucking Fnatic.
Map vetoes are so fucking weird, though. This one's super interesting to me because I would wonder who actually makes the call on G2 because I don't know if it's like an in-game leader or coach who decide on it or what it might be.
Look, it's been agreed. We're all saying it's Huxley and fuck Huxley. Okay, so apparently that is what we're all doing. In the community,
yeah, I guess so. But I know when I was coaching Liquid, I wanted to take the map veto away from the players. I wanted that responsibility myself to like determine maps because I think my experience was that I had certain players who individually, like they wanted to play maps they individually felt confident on, but that changed like so frequently from like week to week. So if there was like a map we were doing good on as a team, but a player wasn't doing good on it individually, he wouldn't want to play that map despite the fact that we're looking good on it throughout practice. So I mean, it's always a weird one because I mean, yeah, I agree with Yanko. You play to the comfort of your stars, but at the same time, like for me, I had some stars that were so inconsistent with their feeling on different maps that it was every tournament we went into, even if it was in back-to-back weeks, was like a different map is like our go-to map. And it's like, this isn't any way to do this. Like we have to find some consistency and, like we have to have some kind of an idea of what map we're going to be good on coming into this week. And it can't be we show up on the day of the game and everyone, someone comes in and just says, hey, I fucking want to play this map instead of what we went over last night. I changed my mind. I looked at this demo last night and, this is scary. I don't want to go here. And I feel like that emotion from players is, just messed with my head as a coach in terms of like, I was like, I don't want you to feel like this. I don't want you guys to like have that fucking stress. So let me do it.
By the way, I actually just looked this up now. In the two tournaments that G2 won, Blast World Final and IEM Katowice, they are far and away the team that has the highest rating for fragging as a whole team. Katowice, they have a 1.13 rating over 12 maps, which is mental for a team. And then in Blast World Finals, it's 1.11. Right? The problem I have with their team, there's two parts. One, their main strength is player strength. Like, I actually don't think they're some like super duper team. Like, you see, they don't have like super coordination. They're not like they have like loads of set. They're not innovating anything. So that's why I even found when they were winning, it was a bit overrated. The idea, like, they're just a new god team. It's like they're going to fall off eventually. But then the other thing is, because they in that streak just never lost any map. They would even win the opponent's map. That's going to make you actually have a totally deluded idea of what your maps are that you're good on. Like, by that logic, they were good on every map. Like, there's no way what happens is your fragging probably just made up for the few times you should have lost, like, 13, 16 on a map, and Monacy fragged everyone, or Niko fragged everyone, or JKS had a clutch round. Like that, I think sometimes you cover your flaws when you're on a heater like that. And what you don't realize is, like, what we're talking about essentially is, since you need those stars to pop off, that's what G2's game is about. You've actually got to streamline it. You're probably good on like 3 maps ideally, and you just want to get them every time possible. Fuck what the last result on it was, or if this team's good on it. That's your game. Your game essentially is we hit the hardest on our maps.
Yeah, and I think, you tailor your game and your map pool to fit your players. I mean, for example, when I was in FaZe and, we would have smart players and good aimers like in Niko and Rain, guys like Olaf, who was really experienced, the Cold 2 on the lurk, then, I want to play maps where they can work, like they can make things happen, right? Which is mostly what it was at the time, was like Mirage, Nuke, Dust 2, right? So where I can put them into where it's not that difficult to get, let's say, post plants, right? Because when you have Niko and Olaf, well, then, they may have a higher chance of winning a 2v3, right? Than some teams would have winning a 3v3 on a different map, right? So I think you have to look at the makeup of your team and roster and what are your players' strengths, and then pick your maps accordingly. That's why I always said, for a team like Cloud9 to be the best in the world, really, like, their map pool has to be, their best maps need to be Overpass, Vertigo, and probably like, Ancient or Anubis, right? Like, because when they came onto the scene, it was Overpass, Train, and Vertigo. And that's so hard because, a lot of teams, they ban one of those maps, and the second one out of the 3 is probably low on the map pool for them, right? Because everyone's familiar with Inferno and Mirage and Nuke, so it feels silly not to play that map when your players know it and that sort of a jazz. While on the other hand, for a team like FaZe, I'd always say Inferno, Mirage, Nuke, similar like with G2, like those should be their strongest maps if they're going to win tournaments. And then some of the other ones, hopefully you're like really good on, or pretty good on one of the other ones. And then, you don't need to win 2-0 every series. You need to win 2-1. So as long as you can get 2 out of your 3 best maps in majority of the vetoes, then you're going to be pretty good.
By the way, the one that now people have forgotten about because the playoffs came along is, bro, the one you have to go back and watch is what the fuck the end of that Navi FaZe series at the end on Anubis was, where it was like 15-9 or something. Like, bro, that's going to be one of the craziest collapses, but also like insane, like plot armor. That dude, I can't even lie. After that series, even though it didn't make any sense, they weren't playing well. I was like, I assume FaZe just has to win the major. No, they can't. They won't die. They're like a fucking Dragon Ball Z boss. Like, you have to do the Super Saiyan move at the end to kill them. Like, they keep appearing out of the smoke when you think they're dead. That was so crazy, the end of that series, guys.
I couldn't fucking believe it. I couldn't even fucking believe that game. I like, who was the clutch? Was it fucking
You mean the Rops one on Mirage?
No, the one on Anubis. It was NPL with that 1v2 clutch.
Oh, yes.
I thought it was done after that. I thought it was just going to be fucking done after that. The fact I don't know how. I still to this day don't know how FaZe survived that.
I mean, Brokey was in God mode as far as I remember. That was like one of those ones where he was absolutely fucking carrying that shit, wasn't he?
But I mean, to win 7 of the last 8 rounds on CT Anubis, with how T-sided the conversation has been with this map, like that CT side's supposed to be the weakness. That's such a big boy comeback. But I'll tell you what, the thing I remember most from that series is Simple. Just you want to talk about someone disappearing from a series?
True.
Simple had no fucking impact. I was so disappointed at the end of that game that Simple just didn't have one round where he just took over the fucking game.
Especially because here's the thing, right? It's not like he's doing some shit if you're like a fan of his, like, oh, but he's actually trying to be more of like a team player. Bro, they still drop him like the fucking like P250 on the pistol so he can get armor and shit like that. Like, he still has the AWP all the time. If you just look, he was just whiffing. Like, you know how in his prime, the first shot always hits from Simple. Then it's like, right, we'll see if you can get the second kill. Dude, he would just miss like a normal mid-range AWP shot. It was crazy. Like, you almost can't believe it's the same player.
Yeah, I don't know what happened in that series. He was shook or something. It was funny. I think it was Dinka who asked like Blade like a pregame interview, I think right before that series about Simple, because they just like come off like that Monte game like a couple days, like I think the day before it was, and was just like, what's up with Simple? Like did Monte get to him? And Blade was just like, yeah, like Blade's like oddly enough way too fucking honest.
I love it. Yeah.
But he is just like
completely in his head.
He's like, I don't know what's going on with Simple, but it seems like there was some shit going on there, and I was just like, "Don't say that."
I love it.
But yeah, he was. I don't know. Mentally, he didn't seem like switched on in the same way. At least in that map.
Dude, that's where I would love it, because let's be real, he's going to get booted. That's where I would love it if like they did an inter with NPL after they got eliminated, and he just did like the passive-aggressive Simple one of like, you know what, I think some players on our team, like, you know, some of them at the AWP, for example, they just didn't really hit their shots, and, you know, you need your star players to step up if you want to win, because you know how Simple did like 7-month campaign of that, where every time they lost, it was like, right, what's he going to say about the NPL guy now without mentioning his name? They'd be like, well, you know what, some of our players are really experienced. Like, bro, there's only one guy that's just joined the team recently. Like, you may as well just say fuck NPL at this point. Like, these interviews are mad, bro. You might listen to this. What's the point in this? What are we doing at this point in time?
That team has gotten in such a bad way when you just can't. When like every single fit that joins the team just gets reamed the fuck out. Like you could that is just a telltale sign of a team just being an absolute dumpster fire.
Yeah, I don't know. Like even the rumors that are out with. Whatever, you know, whether they're going to remove Blade and NPL, like you can't remove Blade, dude. Like that's
who are you getting instead is what I don't get.
Like, I mean, that's the one guy who's like keeping things, and you can say whatever you want about Simple. He didn't win a major until Blade became his coach, right? So
true.
I think he deserves a good amount of credit for the success that Navi has had. And yeah, I mean, their season is over now, right? Like they didn't get some of the visas for Dallas. So Dallas and Washington, they're not going to be there. So I don't know what's going to happen. I hope that Simple takes like an extended time off and sort of tries to, I don't know, maybe figure some shit out. I don't know. Like it's hard to hold anything against him considering the circumstances. But, you know, Navi needs to create a roster, build a roster which he isn't going to have problems against, which I don't know if it's possible. But if he is unhappy and you're not getting, you know, strong performances from him, you're not going to do much, no matter who the other players are on the team. So that's what Navi has to figure out. I think probably you remove MPL and you need someone more experienced, because Bit doesn't have like a massive amount of experience, and he fell off a little bit too. So that's when it really starts showing up and becomes a bigger issue.
Well, and I mean, for another completely different reason too, like if you're going to have Simple in this team, like Simple's mindset is always win now, you know, like how do you convince Simple that it's like rebuilding time? Like you have Simple, you have Electronic both playing well. Perfecto's obviously a piece you're going to keep. I mean, you can't go down and pick up the NPLs. And I mean, even I thought, you know, this goes back to like, I don't want to go all the way back to the SDY thing, because I thought SDY was doing fine and doing well in that team. But like, I think that's the biggest problem, is when you have those like diverging mindsets of like trying to pick up someone young and inexperienced, while the other 4 players on this team are like, nah, bro, we just played in the Cologne Grand Finals, like one of the greatest games of all time. We just won a major back in Stockholm. Like we're in win now mode. You know, like we're not here to build you up. It's time to get going. And if that's going to be the philosophy, like I don't care what Blade says about not picking anyone up who's like 25 years or older. You have to get like an established player, an established experienced player.
And also, how unlucky is NAVI? Like, think of the players they had in the academy team. They had Bit, they had Monacy, they had Headtrick, who was even looking decent now. The one they chose to put in their team after they got Blit was fucking NPL, who seems like the only one who wasn't good. It doesn't even seem like he was good in the academy team. Like, how have you picked that wrong? As far as I know, the Headtrick guy could have just been a rifler in NAVI. Like, why not? Why is that not possible?
Yeah, he even played as a stand-in at that
the Blast that Simple couldn't play, yeah.
Blast group. So, yeah, that's strange. Usually, you know, Navi's super spot on with those. You remember when they pulled out Perfector? Like,
oh yeah,
you know, it's like
Defecto.
There were so many other names. Oh, by the way,
mate, there's an example of why I don't want to hear this idea that Blade sucks. It isn't just that everyone fragged out and simple and they won the major. Mate, I never would have picked that Perfecto guy. I couldn't see that. But then when you see how he fit in Navi, dude, that's genius. If that was really Blade who saw that in fucking Simon Gaming, he is a genius, mate.
I mean, he also had a hand in the Gambit Youngsters project.
Yep.
And like forming that lineup and scouting those players. So I'm not going to doubt Blade's eye for talent anytime soon. Sure, like he might not get it right every single time, but I think he's earned the right to be wrong about a player. And we don't even know if MPL is like the problem necessarily. You know, what's the dynamics of the team, right? Like he doesn't look as bad as, I don't know, Drop, for example.
Oh, by the way, the worst part of the Blade one is what you said earlier, Moses. He's too honest. Like, Blade doesn't understand PR, and he definitely doesn't understand, like, this will not be taken the way I mean it, and I might get memed on. He's just like a little robot, like, yes, this is what I think. Like, that is correct.
Also, why the fuck are they just sending him to do every single fucking interview?
You know exactly why.
Dude, it's the one where he said, though.
Let the kid to focus on playing, like, leave him alone.
Like that player, yeah. The one that killed me was the one where he said that he, like, thinks Electronic's a good IGL or something. It's like, here's the sad thing, because I've spoken to Blade, I think I know what he means by that, right? Blade does have a really great mind to be an IGL and a coach, because essentially he actually believes that, like, you can almost, like, teach people anything, and if they just understood the concept, like, they'd get it, and then they'd, like, level up their understanding of the game, which, look, I'd love to be in an idealistic world where that's the case, but I think, like we're saying about Simple, where you want to win now, you have to be a bit cutthroat. You actually have to sort of be like, actually, this guy's not going to get it. So I think his logic is, like, Electronic, like, played entry. He's like a really skilled rifler. He's probably got a good attitude. Doesn't seem like he has a big ego. If he just learns like how to like do my system, then it'd actually be the ultimate, wouldn't it? Because I'd have an IGL and he could frag and he can even be like a semi-entry player. The problem is, I've always said, his problem is, there's a saying in English, the perfect is the enemy of the good. If you actually reach for perfection too much, you miss what is good in front of you that you can just take today. So I always think in that team, it's not like Electronic has to go. He could be a really good rifler again, surely. Surely there's another option than him as IGL.
Don't go down that road. Don't go down that road, Duncan. You can't. How many list off to me with your crazy encyclopedic historical brain? How many players have switched to being an in-game leader for a year and been able to transition back to being a good player?
There's not that many, to be fair.
Niko.
There's not many.
That's fair. About that, because that transition back for whatever reason. Once you take in-game leader roles, I swear to God, like it ruins something in your brain to be. And I don't
think Yanko's Niko one works anyway, because Niko still was like just as good fragging while the IGL, and in many ways look like he did the same thing. So I agree, though, if you do like the hard swap, I don't know if you ever really come. That is true, actually.
That's the only problem with it I see, because I think I would love it too, but
he did changed some things, but not everything, because also the premise was, well, yeah, he has
temporary
in-game lead,
yeah,
but it's also like, well, I don't want to lose everything he brings as a player just so that he can lead, right? So it was a bit of a mix and match, like some places where he could keep some of the spots. He did, mostly on the CT side, he did, but T side, maybe there were some changes. And in the first year, it wasn't great. Like, I think he was 11 or something like that in the top 20. Like, it was lowest for him in a couple of years. But then in 2020,
right, that's the sort of luxury life they call them. Like, yeah, he had top off you 11th in the world. Motherfuckers like your kind are like, what? All right, that's pretty good. What are you talking about?
2020, but then in 2020 he was number 4. So, and that's the second highest in history for an in-game leader.
Okay,
Fallen was number 2 in 2016.
Yeah, well,
or something
listen,
like
we all
that.
know that's fraudulent, obviously. We won't get into that, will we, Yanko? By the way, there's another thing, Yanko. That's how you know it's true. I'm not saying things for you. Know this. I've told him it. I'll tell him to his face. I believe that statement. Like that, I am just a crazy motherfucker. Like that. I am the Skip Bayless of CS:GO in many ways. I believe that shit. But the other thing on that particular topic as well is NAVI. I know. Unfortunately, there's the really awkward scenario of the real life situation and the conflict and like the PR of what happens if you pick up a Russian player, for example. But guys, the old problem in the CIS region was that you had like NAVI, maybe like the odd player on flip side, and then most of the other players, like there'd be a few players on a Gambit or something. There weren't that many talents you would actually bother to take or who looked like they were rising talents. This is the craziest golden generation of like raw talents and aimers and skilled players the region's probably ever produced. It's just unfortunately like you can't just take them all. And also contracts are changed. Like you can't just pick everyone up for free. I feel like the timing's so bad because you look at some of the other teams, dude, there's even people in teams like Forza could probably be in an RV, you know.
Yeah, I think, especially, I mean, the CIS, it's so wild, like you talk about Brazil. Where's the fucking AWPer that's really good, like a really sick prospect? There's a couple, Safe is NQZ, maybe something will turn out of him. Try, I know he's not Brazilian, but he's played.
The Zevi guy's all right on pain.
Yeah, like it's also looking decent, but where's your... Okay, Monacy is maybe asking for too much, but your Zorti, your Wonderful, your Dexter, right? Any of these guys, like they're just churning out AWPers in the CIS, and Brazil doesn't have one at all. I mean, you look even in NA, OC. Nothing. I mean, okay, Jason, just fucking shitting on him. But I mean, you'd want for something like a bit more explosive. And also, I don't think in that team he could get enough space to even do stuff like that, but that's a different conversation. There's your boy Junior.
That's what I was gonna say. Like after OC, you get to know it, and even OC up until like the major hadn't really had a whole lot of blow up games with the off.
Yeah,
right?
he had a lot of
times with the rifle.
Yeah.
Like I mean, Liquid's historically always had an issue of bringing an AWPer in and giving an AWPer space to work with.
Wasn't that like the dick joke everyone was making for banter? Like that she naffs the best AWPer on Liquid or whatever. Like, because you know what we're all like. We're all just pieces of shit like that. Even though it's mean, it's funny.
No, but it's a good point about Brazil, and it's a good point about NA. Like if you think about if you focus on NA, like the bit like you want to talk about two of the most important roles you can have in a Counter-Strike team, AWPer and in-game leader, and we have like 0 of both.
Moses, I was almost crying laughing when they did that. I think it was Blast did that segment where they were like, right, what do you guys think of Nitro? And they're all like, yeah, good in-game leader, all those other people. And they're like, oh, how would you rate him in terms of predictability? Like very, very predictable. Like, what? How could dude? If every other top team says that, I'm Danger Will Robbins. I think we're in trouble here. Like,
well, yeah. If you're rating your opponent's in-game leader, of course you're going to say it's good when he's predictable.
It's so ridiculous, isn't it? I know.
Yeah, but
that's so sick.
Speaking of Nitro, man, he's surely he's got to be on the way out, right? Like he has to be.
He's also, to be fair, it's not even hating if you want him replaced. He's played a long time, guys. He's even played as an IGL for a long time. He's had a very long career and a very successful career. Like I don't know who you replace him with, but if I were them, by the way, if I'm Liquid, I just commit to this idea that I have 3 NA players and 2 Europeans. That's just how my team is from now on,
Yeah. I think for them also is, this conversation with Yakinder leading on some maps because Nitro couldn't be there for a week. I said this like on the stream the other day.
That sounds like some bullshit, doesn't it?
Can you imagine? No,
it's because his kid was born. His second kid was born.
No, that's okay. Like that he wasn't there. I understand. So it's great. But riddle me this: if Carrigan is not with the team for a week, does someone else lead on a couple of maps?
That's also though where Nitro himself is like too much of a nice guy. Those Nemos is like, if Carrigan does that, Carrigan's going to say, "Look, like you had a cool week, but I'm the IGL now."
Yeah,
like,
I hope you got a taste of it.
Feels like Nitro's like, "Yeah, no, go ahead, like let's try it, let's see if it works out." I was like, "Oh, come on, man!"
And I'll tell you one more thing. I think Yakindar, he is biting off way more than he can chew. Like he's trying to be not in-game leader, but some of the in-game leading, some of the leadership role on the team. He's like teaching them how to play CS and like
that just triggers me so hard.
The European meta and whatnot. And then on the server, he's super aggressive and trying to create space. It's like that's not really working, dog, is it? Like like pick what you want to be in that team. Do you just want to be a player who takes tries to create a lot of space and is aggressive and everything, then leave some of the other stuff to other players on the team. You want to take a bigger leadership role? Well, then let other players have impact on the server and try to do things. Right now, it feels like Liquid is Team Yakindar, and he is the ruler.
I mean, I'm gonna toot my own horn and just bring this up because I said this on an episode after Cologne last year when Yakinder came in and all the conversation was around how he's reinventing the team, and it was like the roadmap at that point was just so obvious to me, like laid out. It was like I think I gave it like 6 months, which is maybe off a little bit, but it was just like you have someone come in that changes the identity this much and becomes the face of the team this much, does all the interviews, all the praise going towards him. It's a matter of time before like that team, like hijacked is too strong of a word, but it was obvious he was eventually going to just take over the in-game leader duties. It was like that was always going to happen because that's the only way it works. If someone's teaching the team how to play a certain style of Counter-Strike and you're also teaching the in-game leader, eventually that you're just going to become the in-game leader. It's just how it happens.
And it's wild. He's 23. Why would he be doing that? I don't think he should do that.
But it also comes like, remember, like right after, right when I was in Liquid and I brought in Fallen, and Stewie was calling, and then they wanted to switch to Fallen or Stewie wanted to get off the in-game leadership and pass it on to Fallen, and then I left and it went back to Stewie, and then it went back to Fallen one more time. It's also like, remember, this is also a team that like just doesn't understand like how to take short-term losses for a long-term benefit. They don't stick out the process, like they don't say this is the plan of action and we're going to look 3 events ahead. And yeah, this is probably going to suck and be rough and be frustrating and stressful. And we're going to have to stick it out for like 3 events so that come that 4th event, we start taking the positive steps and seeing the fruits of our labor. That's not, Liquid as a team can't do that. They don't handle that well. So, I mean, I don't know. I think there's a whole host of issues, and yeah, that team has some soul searching. That org has some things to figure out moving forward.
On the Yakindar angle, like people will know. I wouldn't say I'm a hater. I'm just a critic. Like, I actually think he's a fabulously skilled player, and I do think some of the stuff he does on T side, like there are a lot of teams I would like to see him play on the T side for. He could do a lot for him. The problem is, like, the reason why I never bought this whole angle of like he's like revolutionized the game and it's like, first of all, even his T sides, like, it's not like he's actually some like mini IGL breaking down like the defense, like some genius Peyton Manning quarterback. And he's reading what to do. Half the time, it looks like he just has the balls to go for some really aggressive entries. And if he lands them, he's like old school Apex. He could just hit you like both in the head instantly and break the site open. But he'll also have rounds where he just runs in a brick wall. And mate, the one that kills me is on CT side. On CT side, this is one of those guys who just likes to push and die early so fucking much. It's mental and just leave you in a 5v4. Like, on T side, you can do that. That's sort of your role even in the team. On CT side, you have to be more responsible, I think, sometimes.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, you need like coordinated aggression, right? Not like the solo crazy aggression from just one player. But I think too, Yakinder suffers from that kind of I think like one thing easily you could criticize his game for is I think he has certain games where he feels like he has to do too much. And I think that might be part of it. Like he more than anyone, I feel like I see games from Yakinder where I'm like, he's trying to dictate way too much on this map at the moment. And I don't know if it's like a lack of confidence that his teammates can get the job done or lack of confidence that they're on the same page. But yeah, he doesn't hold himself back.
Dude, Dude, that was the thing I hated about the narrative about it was Niko that failed and blew the major. It's because, first of all, he had maps, like even in that other series we were talking about, where the game should just be over already if everyone else turns up. You didn't have to be on the bad map at the end. But the other thing is, like, actually, Niko isn't like old school Device where you sort of play more and more passive when you're a bit afraid. You don't go with like the push you should. You sort of let them like bully you a bit. Dude, when he loses games, I also feel the same about Niko. He actually tries to do too much. It's almost like he knows he's losing the game. And in this case, on an uncomfortable map, he just tries to make a play, but it's just not the right time for it, you know? So that's why I find all these discussions so hard. Like, why are we going to separate a player from his team?
Yeah, I felt the worst for Niko in that Bad News Eagles game. Oh my God.
That should have been a win based on his play, mate. That was a win all day long for many teams.
Yeah, but here's the thing. Like, you are choosing which narrative and how you want to. I saw Maui make like tweets like, you know, he will be remembered for the miss on Nuke and something else, like you know, some other
I remember the tweet.
Fail, you know, or the miss in the second pistol against Bad News Eagles, right, in the 3-1. It's like, you do know that even if he misses that shot and dies, that doesn't necessarily mean they have to lose the round.
No,
you know, his teammates are still in a 2v1. Like, he had ridiculous rounds in that game and they still ended up losing, right? Like, you can't make. And also, that's like, you're trying to create that narrative and talk about that. I can say like, yeah, well, what about, you know, the Boston major and the game against Mouz Sports where, you know, the clutch where he drops down vents and dies in the flames and gets them into overtime and they keep going, right? You're not going to tell me that the final is on fucking Niko. Like, I'm not going to take that either. You're going to tell me about the nuke round and missing with the Deagle from behind. I'm going to tell you about the semifinal against Heroic and his performance on Inferno, where he single-handedly pretty much on T side was able to, you know, destroy Heroic and get G2 into the grand final, right? Like, sure, there've been some moments, but to try to build a narrative that Niko is like a choker and that he never shows up in big games, like, you can't say that. Sure, can you say that you would have liked him to have played better in some of the finals or some of those games where they got eliminated? Sure, but it's not that he's only playing bad in those games. He has good games and bad. So yeah, I just like, for me, that's just like, whatever.
Also, the other thing is, right, there's a couple of things to that. One, the round you're talking about as well. Dude, if you even look it up, like, online, it's titled as, like, costs G2 the major. Like, dude, they're up 15-12. Like, there's, like, there's 2 more rounds to be played after this. And that was where, if you remember...
There's one more map, even if they win.
Yeah, exactly. There would have been a third... They wouldn't have won it off that anyway. And by the way, most people would have had them losing the third map anyway. And then secondly, that was where late in that game also Simple was catching fire and hitting everything. So it's a perfect storm of just missing one shot. And I actually do agree. I think that particular run, the Stockholm one, aside from that fucking Deagle miss, is almost like a superlative run from Niko. He was unreal. Yes. I agree with Janko. Like, the Heroic guys basically told me, like, well, yeah, of course we should have won that fucking third map. Like, we couldn't do anything. The guy just shot us every time we appeared on the screen, like those classic reverse POV movies where you see the Niko Ferrari peek everyone and you don't even see his elbow and you're dead. Like, I think fans at home are just like thinking it's like an FPL game they're playing. Like, no way. And then the other one as well for me is what they ignore about this, because people did the same thing to Simple when he didn't have as great a performance in Cologne, even though it's not a major, right? People go like, oh, I expect the best player to step. Like, you do know the majority of players play worse in a major final. The majority. People like Cold Zero are not only aliens, they were only in 2. It's not like they played 10 and they were amazing in 10. Like, everyone's brain's been broken by fucking Michael Jordan. Like, almost everyone else in history wasn't that guy. Like, most people are just human. And when they have a really good game, it goes well. They can still fuck it up. Sometimes they have a bad game, but they win anyway because the team plays well. Like, people act like my boy Device has 4 majors. Dude, one of them, he played like shit in the final, but his team won the game for him. Like, these narratives don't make sense. We have to ask questions like, what was required of you? Like, how many mistakes did he make? 'Cause I agree with Janko. If you're going to take that one mistake from Stockholm, it's like, so he has to just be perfect now. They're never allowed to make a mistake.
That's the problem. It's like, if someone if you want to call someone clutch, it's like he has to be clutch every single fucking time.
Exactly.
Like, that's not how it works. It's just that, you know, he takes the chance, he takes the opportunity, and he probably more often than not makes it like half of the times, because to begin with, it's such a difficult, shot to make, or such a difficult round to win, or whatever it is. Like that's just so crazy for you to expect, like, oh, so every final he plays, he needs to have one of those games where he has 30 kills.
Like, dude, I swear, I could look. I have the mind to do this, but I'll do it for you anyway. If you make the list of the GOAT players, Yanko, so you're going to do like Zero. We just discussed he's never even been in a major final till now, and he played like probably the lowest ranked team ever to be in a major final. So that one's off the table. Simple's had a bunch of screamer finals. The SK one, the fucking Astralis Face It one. Some of those were terrible performances. Tried to do too much. Niko's had this one and the Boston one, but actually in this one before the Deagle one, it's still pretty good performance. Keep going back. Olaf Meister's first final, they just lost to Nip in a series they should never lose. Fucking Get Right, who's one of those clutch players ever, was in like 5 finals, won one of them, which was fluky, the aforementioned Olaf Meister one. He had a bunch of ones where he'd have a good game, but they might lose. They have a bad game, they don't win. Like, every player, Kenny S, before he won the major at Cluj-Napoca, was in the Cologne final and had that cobble game where he had like 5 kills and literally was crying on stage because he thought, I've just blown the major and my chance. Everyone, Shocks doesn't even play as well in them. Dude, I don't think people understand. It's like the Super Bowl. Sometimes even great players, like, you don't get to that many and the pressure is so insane on you specifically. Like, let's be real. I'm sure JKS was sad when he lost like a big final or something in his career, but it's not the same as like everyone in the world telling you, like Niko, like, you suck, you cost them the match. Like, that's a different level of pressure. And I think there's only like 10 guys know what that feels like.
Yeah, fucking Niko of every player in the world is probably the most, I don't most hated. Yeah, scrutinized is the best way to put it. But like he for whatever reason, people love to just dumpster on Niko, which is crazy to me. I fucking love watching Niko.
By the way, the other angle that kills me inside is the fucking roll and the rifle angle. It's like, bro, if you can only compare him to Simple and Ziwu and fucking Shiro, they're all AWPers. Like, spoiler, they do the same to Axile, by the way. If Axile ever has a series off, you're shit. It's like, bro, him and Niko are like among the entry pack. Like, these aren't like the fucking bait lurker. That kills me, dude, because the bait rifler can guarantee his kills every game. The person who plays like semi-entry like these guys do, again, it's like your Kindar. He plays the ultimate version of it, but you're going to have games that just don't hit. They can't do it. I'm sorry, the rifle is not as good as the AWP like that. The AWP can take over the game in a way you can't on the rifle.
I think that's a really key point too, because I've had this battle with Yanko as well. Because like Niko as a rifler, just like he breaks out of like the restraint, like the rolled conversation is so impossible with Niko.
Yes,
because you would never call him an entry fragger, but his opening stats are fucking mental. Yep. I remember having that battle with Yanko a number of times, and I'm just like, wait, maybe I do need to call him an entry fragger.
Well, it's because like he's not in the pack, right? Like he's not your first guy going in, like Carrigan or Reynar. He plays the same position, for example, like Rops, but he plays it a lot more aggressively.
Absolutely.
Right? Because he's not, and that's fine. You have players with different styles, because Rops in the clutch is insane. And even if it's a 1v3, if he has good timing or whatever, he can win you those rounds. But Niko is a guy, if he gets good timing on the more aggressive play, he can open up the bomb site. And that's it. The round is over, right? Like it's basically comes down to, right, you have a player who has really good aim and really good game sense, so he has a really good sense for timing and understands what's going on the map. So you want to try to give him isolated fights where, there's not an AWPer waiting for him and he doesn't have to go through, utility to get that fight. Like, he's going and he has the advantage, he has the better info. So that's why we're seeing, Exile plays B apps on Mirage. On T side, right? Because that's where usually on the CT side is the weakest player.
Yep.
So that's actually where it's like matchups, in the NFL. You're trying to find the matchup, right, with that sort of a style or mismatch, and just create an advantage. Because just knowing that Exile plays B, for example, and then you have Hooksy or Carrigan on the CT side, that's gonna make, Monacy or Brocky probably decide to lean more towards B than to A in, let's say, some situations. If it's 4v4s or something like that, who knows? Maybe you're going to call different things in freeze time because you need to dedicate a bit more resources to that side of the map. Because if you just leave it to an aim fight and to like duke it out, Exile versus Carrigan or Exile versus Hooksy, I don't think it's a massive mystery who comes out on top in that one.
In fact, if you go and look, I just looked it up now, Moses. It's true. On both T and CT sides, Niko has the most opening kill attempts. And on CT, he gets it 60%. And on T, he gets it 44%. But he's doing almost 28% opening on T. Yeah. Right? Think about that, right? Almost half the time, he gets the kill. If people know the stat, if you're 5v4 on T side, you just win the round like 75% of the time. Like, that's why I'm sorry, no one calls Huxley one of the greatest IGLs in the world. Like, you have the fucking OP rifle. Mate, your rifle just opens around for you every time, makes you 5v4. At that point in time, your call doesn't even have to be as good. You rotate off the defense, you spread them out, you can do whatever you want at that point. You're just playing with house money. I'm not hating on Huxley either. Like, you did what you did, but essentially what we're pointing out here is Niko does uniquely insane things as a rifler, and then everyone goes, yeah, but what about the few things he didn't do? It's like, fucking hell, but we don't do that with other players. Like, we don't hit on other players that way, surely.
Bro, I'll tell you what, I don't care how many times he criticizes analysts, but Simple makes some fucking rough decisions at times sure. that he obviously gets away with. But if you watch him, you're just like I'm false prey to it too. Even I give him the benefit of the doubt because I'm just like, you can do stupid things in this game that shouldn't even be possible. So fair play if you want to go for it. But when those backfire, he's made some rough decisions that put his team in horrible spots.
Anyway, that's enough of the Niko Defense squad.
Yeah,
right, we'll have an annual meeting in another year.
It's so fucking like it's getting really tiresome because the problem is that I do know him, right, and we are friends. But it's also like it's a great player that's just getting not smeared, but like
stripped out.
Yeah, and it's like, why are we doing this? Like to this guy, why is everyone trying so hard to make this the narrative? Why is he scrutinized so much and not someone like Elige or some of those like other players? Well, so yeah, fuck that.
We could do that. We can. I'm in for that. Well, let's just we'll pick like 4 players next episode. We'll just tear them apart.
Them.
Yeah. We'll get
also, by the way, if you go and look at the stats at the major, he was still like the fucking let me see, the 8th highest rated player.
Yeah,
that's not bad at all.
Like, essentially, even if people think he sucked on the last map, that means on the rest of the maps, he must have been really good to average it out.
Yeah, he played.
What do you want?
7 maps. Him and Hat-Trick are there next to each other with 7 maps played. But yeah, of course, now, we're going to go into Dallas with, Vitality not being there, everyone else pretty much being there. Well, NAVI didn't get their visas either.
That was going to be my next question, was Dallas. Yeah. How do we contextualize an event right after the major?
Same way we did with Rio right before it, or Dallas last year. I mean, it was the same
Dallas
thing
last
with
year
Dallas
was the worst one, wasn't it? Hence with the standing instead of Spinx can somehow go to the final. What?
There were like 5 standing teams at that event.
G2 lost to Furia in the quarterfinals.
Oh, by the way, here's what
and then Furia lost once with the standing.
The joke about this tournament is this, as if to prove the narrative that it doesn't matter and it's a week after the major. This is where you just know fucking Cloud9 like wins the event or something. It's like, fuck off, you clowns. Like, can you actually ever do it when it matters? Why do you have to keep giving me hope, you bastards?
Bro, they're going to have the crowd behind them again. They're going to have the fucking crowd behind them again.
I just have that horrible feeling,
There's one thing, though. We're going to get Astralis.
My God.
in a tier 1 tournament, actually, and they're playing Liquid in the opening game in a best of 1.
That's a meme right there.
This team list is fucking wild. Bro, what happened to Mouz? What's up with my boy Mouz? Are we done with them? Are we off the Mouz hype train?
Yeah, I don't know what happened to them. They just like shit the bed in Rio and in
like they just
and at the major. Like, it's actually unbelievable. I don't know if like you look at that. I think they need a better opponent than Torji.
Yeah.
Frozen and Exertion are really good. Like they can be a legit 2 core riflers, a passive and an aggressive one on your team. JDC, I'm not 100% sure. Like, as that sort of a more supportive rifler, is he fine enough for them or not? And then you look at Dexter as an in-game. I mean, it's so funny. Like, they were just adding these academy players into the main team. I mean, Shui now, right? Legit would probably be the better option for them in that position. I don't know if they can afford them, though.
Not anymore. Maybe if they didn't make it all the way,
And also, even Acor was on Mouz, but he was terrible. Like,
he was bad at that point.
At that time.
That's also where people have got to stop doing that. Like, look, it's funny when Mouz and Acor and Shui beat Mouz, but like, if you saw the way Acor played on Mouz, like everyone would cut him. Like that was definitely the right move. In fact, that I always give this analogy. You've probably heard those stories on social media where someone's like, "My wife left me with the kids. I was 300 pounds and like in bad condition, but I hit the gym and now she doesn't know what she's missing." It's like, by that logic, thank her. You weren't going to fucking do that by yourself, apparently. Like, if me kicking you made you get awesome and like level your game up, who the fuck are you hating on? Like, if Acor's good now, and even then, let's be real, it's tournament to tournament, then it sounds like maybe he just needed to be in a different team or move on. Like, they gave him quite a while, if you remember.
Well, also, I mean, like, if you remember, like, when he popped on the scene at Flashpoint 1, like, stylistically, that was never going to fucking work in Tier 1 Counter-Strike.
Sure.
Like, the way he opted and the way he played the game, he had to learn some fucking harsh lessons.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I was really critical of him at the time. But then, once he had good games and started playing much better Gamer Legion, I was like, glory, more power to him, right? He managed to turn it around.
Glory to Acor, okay. By the way, that's also some meme like simulation shit where it's like, and he's in the Acor arena, like, oh, fuck off. Who wrote this? This is just bad writing, isn't it?
Anders made that joke during a cast, and I was like, fuck off, bro. Like, what? I can't do anything with that one.
I know, it's just nonsense, isn't it? By the way, we mentioned it earlier, but even though, look, I can't really make a case he's the best player in the world, but mate, Rops might just be like the most clutch player in fucking years, Yanko. It's absurd. Like at this point, I always say now, this reminds me of Simpleton's peak. When they're in the 1v3, I know he's getting the first kill no matter how hard it is. I just question is, how's he going to set up this second one? It's like the amount of times he has to like one-tap someone instantly to make it a 1v2. It's ridiculous. But he just seems like he always does it. Like he's always in the round.
Yeah, he is the best closer in the game right now with, I would say, Serrato probably a close second, but doesn't get the same caliber of games to maybe showcase his skill. I had Rops like last year. I remember I tweeted like at the start of the year, after Katowice or during Katowice, like he was going to be top 5. I think he ended being 7. So it's also like really fucking hard to be top 5 as a rifler.
Oh, for sure.
It feels like, but yeah, he's just incredible, right? With the amount of impact. Sometimes maybe you still see him bait a little bit, right? But it's a small.
If you win that off, they'll let you get away
between
with it.
Team play and baiting,
Exactly.
Bro,
when you're that good at closing, sometimes maybe you should bait.
Yeah.
He's the only reason they beat Bad News Eagles. His like Mirage performance down the stretch, like I think it was like maybe like the last
for sure
4 or 5 rounds of regulation into overtime was just like, you are the only reason FaZe is winning this game.
Yeah,
in fact, by the way,
it was unreal. That clutch with low HP
with like 2 HP or something.
Yeah. Even though, look, he's obviously like a more skilled player, he has a different style. It does actually have that feeling of like prime Cold Zero, where it's just inevitable they're going to win the round. Like you can tell the opponent even thinks it, mate. Like I think when you play a player like that, you just start making more stupid mistakes because it's like facing. That's why I used to call Cold Zero the Terminator. It's like he just never stops fucking coming. You run, you get in a car, you like drive under the bridge, you get on a plane.
He's
it's like
walking
fucking
the whole time.
No, exactly. Oh, he's like one of those Warner Brother cartoons. You get in a plane, you take a ticket over the other side of the world, you get out in China, he's just waiting for you with like a fucking hello. Like, what the fuck? He's already here. Like, you feel like you can't get away, mate. It's mental, innit?
It's because he's got like, dude, he's got that like fucking deadly combination of just like obviously like mechanical gift and then just a cerebral player. Like he's just so smart. And like you just always feel so outplayed when someone's cerebral just fucking breaks you down like that.
Oh, by the way, that's also one of those things where, when people tell that origin story and they're like, oh, they all hated on him and said they thought he cheated and used a wall hack in FPL. It's like, have you seen how he plays now? Like, actually, it's like when people say, people used to think Zemu cheats. It's like, bro, if you took the name off now, I'd think he cheated. What are you talking about? Like, he actually does have the skills that a cheater would have, basically.
Yeah. Yeah, dude, if I played Rops in like a random game and he was doing that shit, I'd be like, yep, he's cheating.
Yeah, he's just bullshit, exactly.
I'm out.
Yeah. So, I mean, one thing that we it was weird that because we never really just start off the episode with like going straight into, game talk or tournament talk or CS talk. We just.
Chad's not here to bring up fucking anime porn, so it's a little bit rough.
Yeah, I know, but I thought we could still like, so Duncan, for example, like what is your like favorite like major that you were working actually? That's like your best one and your worst one.
I've had some good ones. Like, here's the problem. Sadly, Mouz will know this. Even though, like, Atlanta major was an amazing major. Unfortunately, it was really limited for us as analysts. Like we actually, because it was on TV, we had the least amount of time. Like there was times we had like a minute. I'm not joking. And I'm not joking. There was a famous segment where Richard did that thing where he throws a question to me. And as he's finishing the question, it's like an open-ended one as well. Yeah, like, what do you think about the way that this team could play though and possibly match up? As he's saying that, like Alchemist in my ears, like cut, throwback. And I had to just go, yeah. And then just pass back. And I'm like, well, fuck me. Because remember, everyone on HLTV just thinks you're a moron. You have nothing to say there. Like, oh, great, the game's starting. So unfortunately, that one can't be the best, I'm afraid. I actually think the Stockholm one was pretty banging. That was like, I had to, because also it was the first one after the online era.
You shut your fucking mouth.
That felt, obviously for Moses, look, he had his own problems there, but I wasn't part of the, well, until I got cited as part of the old boys club, but fucking catching strays. I did nothing, mate. But aside from that, I did enjoy that nature. Plus, if you go back.
So funny.
The problem is, I do think that year 2016 had two of the best ones. Cologne and Columbus were fucking unreal. They had the matches, they had the crowd, they had the storylines. Those two are like always live in my mind.
You and me got reamed out in Cologne.
Why?
Because
what happened there?
It was the 4-man desks, and we were doing like every single game.
Oh, yes, you're right.
I did every single game, literally, and you just didn't do like one because you were recording something like a voiceover.
Like a segment for them or something, yeah.
Yeah, whatever. Like that was so wild. And then the fourth person would be like Blue or someone who's like, listen, you know, just be quiet.
I can't lie, Yanko. That is low key why some of the old majors were good as well. Because you'd sometimes just have like a random hire as the third person. And if you were like us, it's like being like the strikers in a good team. It's like essentially we were simple and they were MPL. It's like, shut the fuck up. I'm talking now, motherfucker. See, now we get all the balance tests and all professionals. You work with them. Like, it's true. There was a bit of a derail of that made it fun. I can't lie.
I was going to bring up when Duncan and I did Atlanta, that first E-League major, there was no rotation for the analysts.
Oh, it was just us for every game.
It was me, Duncan, and Richard on every desk for every fucking game. And I remember that segment that you just referenced was like the opening, like the pre-show of day 2, like the opening of the day in the arena or in the stadium. And as soon as Duncan said that in my head, I just go, well, this is going to be one hell of a day. It was just like, well, here we go. This is going to be fun.
Oh, mate, there was another thing people don't know as well. Because E-League was a TV production, they kept the same logic as the TV days. So even though we're doing a whole major, and like we said, we don't get breaks, there's only me and Moses, we would also have to come early for a production meeting at like 7 in. So no joke, Yanko, we would just go home, have like the 3 hours sleep, wake up, do the production meeting, and then do the majors, like, and no breaks, and you don't get to talk.
And remember, at the end of the day, we had to do the quick hits for like all their broadcast partners. We had to like go through like the day and like do like little like quick 3-minute breakdown segments on all the matches. That was fucked.
All you need to know is, like, there's a reason why there's all those jokes about me. Like, right, is it the black monster or the white one now? Because they just drink like 3 of those motherfuckers a day because you just keep going. Like you said, at the end of the day, you have to like perk up and do like a nice like 3-minute segment. Like, yeah, well, the good thing about the game was like, I'm so tired, please, I must sleep. I can't talk anymore.
Well, at that point, we know you were already a diva,
no, I was.
Duncan, so you were just getting rock stars. It was.
Oh, that's true. It was Rockstar at the time. You're right. Actually, it was. That was the drink.
Rockstar had to be the one. But Richard reminded me over the major, like the Stockholm one, and then when we were on the desk for the final, and then when Boomage proposed.
Oh yeah.
Oh my lord.
And then you just turn to him, it's like, oh, why is it on that?
Dude, I mean, I've told the story now because everyone's allowed to say this now because it did work out badly, and even he obviously knows it wasn't right. In the green room, when he did that, I did turn to Richard and go, well, he's just ruined his life, hasn't he? And then, because I remember saying, you've just tied, if it ever doesn't work out, possibly the worst moment ever, to the best moment of your career. Exactly. Like, why have you gambled on that? And spoiler, that didn't age well, did it? There's one thing. You know, if they had either that Men in Black device where it flashes in front of your eyes, or that movie, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, they have a machine that can remove memories. I wish I could just remove memories I have about Boomage and things I've seen on Telegram now. I don't want them in my mind. That's like Vietnam. I can't get that out of there now. Like, if someone even says, do you think Boomage should go back to NAVI? I'm like, I'm seeing images, Moses, that coming out of the shadows.
Some of those Telegram pictures were just so fucking wild. Please. What a timeline that was.
I know. It's like that is the definition of TMI. Too much info. No, exactly. It's too much info. Too much motherfucking info, bro. So why did that have to happen?
So which one was the worst then?
Oh, what was the
Cluj
worst?
has got to be up there.
Cluj had a lot of problems. Essentially, Richard always says it, but I'll just lead with that. Anytime you're saying, like, can I please have water to drink? Like, you know, that's not a great major right there, is it? If you're a fan, by the way, that's not even a diva request. You actually need water to talk a lot. Your throat gets really dry.
No, dude, it was the fact that they had like...
But one of my... Sorry, Jason, go ahead.
I was just going to say, the Cluj Napoca thing, like the water was a problem, but also like the cafeteria was on the other side of the arena, through the crowd, up 4 flights of stairs, and they were like box, like Romanian, like, I don't even know. Like food you wouldn't trust. You look at it and you're like, oh, the meat's gray. I'm not eating it.
You would just say, what is that? And they would go, meat. And you go, oh my God, please get me out. Also, Richard's told this story, but it is a totally true story. The Hellspawn guy, who obviously Richard now hates because like 2 months later or whatever, when they had that incident, it might have been a month later when they had the DreamHack Winter incident. Hellspawn was the guy who was actually running a bunch of the tournament. And because Hellspawn's a bit like Blade in that sense, he just tells you like what he's thinking. He has no tact or like fucking like, he doesn't have any PR speak. So me and Richard go to Hellspawn and we go like, look, where's the food? Like we haven't, everyone's hungry and it's been like a while. And Hellspawn goes, I did have the food came, but I gave your food, looking like dead in my face, but I gave your food to the crew. And it's just like, why would you say that to it? Just say it like, no, here's something like, and mate, I was like ready to like melt down completely. Like, I'm fucking hungry, motherfucker. No, I am hungry.
I remember when you did melt down and it was, you know, so back in the day, we're doing like, our shifts are insane, you know, like we're doing, it's 4 best of 3s a day and you're doing like 3 of them at the least. Mostly you're doing like 4 because analysts don't get rotations. We even had those weird tournaments where you don't come back in between maps. So it's like just, but you're still there the whole day. So this Star Ladder one, oh my God. And Duncan makes the rookie mistake where it's like, you guys want to order, and we're really hungry. It's late, we'll order you guys some food, right? So
okay, come on.
Sure, you're tired of fucking eating junk food all the time, but if you're really hungry, you know what's gonna get there for sure? A fucking pizza. A pizza will be there, right? Sooner or later, it will get there. It won't be great, but it will be sustenance. It will fill you up. But Duncan is so tired of eating like junk food and everything, like every day. He's like, can I get some? And they even come and say, okay, we can order you guys pizzas. And then Duncan's like, can I get some sushi? And then, yes. And that's where I knew it was going to go wrong. You can tell the rest of it, Duncan.
Yeah. Basically, at the end of the day, like they were like, oh, the food's in the green room or something. So everyone went back there and like everyone else's food's there and there's just none for me. And I just said to the guy, where's my sushi? And they were like, and they just say something mad like, oh, sorry, we couldn't get any. It's like, oh, well, fuck me then. Like, it's literally the end of the whole event as well. The whole end of the day. Like Yanko says, you've been working insane hours. You're also waiting for that food at the end. Like, well, this will make it all worthwhile. Like, you know, the food will be good. And then I'm not even joking. I shouldn't even tell this part, but I don't give a fuck. It's one of the rare times I was so fucking triggered that I actually did just go back to the hotel, like lock myself in the room. And I remember like throughout the night, Moses and Yanko sending me messages like, just come to the after party, bro. Like, just get a drink, it'll be cool. And I was just like ghosting everyone, like, fuck you all. I'm never going to work this event again. Like, I don't know why they just got me. I was at my weakest, mate. They just triggered me so hard. Like, I thought if I went to the after party, I was just going to go mental. So I was like, I'm just staying in this room. Fuck it. I'm alone. No one cares about me. I don't have food even. I'm stuck in Ukraine, which, listen, back then you used to be allowed to flame. It's just not the best place to be stuck without food at 11 at night. In fact, I'll tell this a story that's not even rude. It's just actually how hotels are some places. Dude, some of those hotels we went to for Star Ladder, I remember calling down and being like, yeah, can I have like a steak and fries when I got back at like 12? And they were like, yes. And then it just never came. Like what? Like, and if you called down, right, the guy at the front desk doesn't give a fuck. He'd be like, I will talk to them. Just hang up the phone. Like, what? Like, no, get me the food. Like, there's times I've just gone to bed hungry, mate. It was mental. Also, people don't know that was the one. I don't know if we can tell this story, surely. Yeah. Can we tell the fuck you, like from the bottom of our heart, fuck you story? There we go. That's the same hotel. When we were in this hotel, and again, this is why you didn't get many breaks. Anders is scheduled for the first match of the day, and literally, I was on the same side of the hotel. I remember messaging Anders at like 3 a.m, like, can you hear that drilling sound? And there's someone with like a jackhammer in the opposite building, like 3 a.m, by the way, guys, on like a weekday. And then when Anders rings down, he says, like, oh, there's seems to be some someone hammering on the other bit? And they just go, yes, we look into it and sort it, and then just hang up the phone again and don't do anything. And I remember after like 4 hours of this shit, when he hasn't slept, just in the group chat, because by the way, I wish we could tell more group chat stories. Some of the shit written in group chats is the greatest stuff of all time. But Anders just writes in there, right in the, we always have 2 group chats, by the way, guys. There's our one with the talent, and then the talent and the people who are the production. Anders just writes in the production one, like, whoever scheduled this tournament, like, so I work in the morning game, from the, like, a heartfelt fuck you. And Anders would never do this, bro. Like, that's how you know he was at his limit,
so
mate.
right,
He's broken. He's a broken man.
He did the late game the day. Yeah, he had the late shift.
Oh, you're right. Yes.
So they gave him like the night and then the morning the next day, and then it was the drilling. So he just said a heartfelt fuck you to whoever came up with this schedule.
Oh, man, here's the thing, though. What you're talking about now, though, this is what gets you through events. Because somehow there's a fucked up thing that everyone has, well, in our generation anyway, where if you're both getting wrecked, but then the other guy's getting wrecked more, you just sort of like laugh at him, like, oh, look at him, he's all triggered and getting fucking wrecked. And that like alleviates your getting wrecked in some way. Like in that moment, I was wrecked too. But when I saw that message, like I had just like a huge smile on my face, lying in my bed, not able to sleep at 6 a.m. I'm like, well, Anders is fully triggered. They've got him. It's like, I don't know why that would be funny, by the way. It's kind of fucked up in a way.
Like, you don't care. As long as there's someone who has it worse.
Exactly.
Yeah, they got him. They won't get me.
Yeah.
Oh, fuck.
Fucking no.
What was another good major we did? 2017 were the majors then? There was Krakow and there was FaZe It.
No, FaZe It was 2018.
FaZe It was 18. 17 was...
Atlanta and Krakow.
Yeah,
right. Atlanta and Krakow.
Boston was good.
Boston was really good.
Boston was a good major.
Must be nice to get invited to work that event, you know. So, you know, it's all good. I'm sure you guys had a great time. Here's the thing, in a fucked up way, this is totally sour grapes, but in a fucked up way, because FaZe didn't win, I am a hater of underdog teams. I would have been so salty that fucking Cloud9 won that final. It's probably, I would have had the same face as Niko, mate, when the confetti came down. Like, probably a good thing I wasn't there, mate. I would have been such a hater. It's unreal.
It's so funny because this major in Atlanta, right? Like, I mean, I broke through in 2016, right? And they just get 2 analysts. They don't really invite me, you know. And that's okay. And then Duncan is like, even tells them and tweets out like, I'm not doing like the next major if they don't hire him. But if they don't hire YNK, I'm not doing it. And then, you know, something happens.
I was right. What I didn't know was they could just hire Yanko without me, so I didn't think it through all that one, did I, Moses? Technically, they gave me my wish, like, but absolutely fucked me, haven't they?
Yanko did to you what you did to Richard.
I did. No, he did in a way we did the package, because if people don't know, it's just because he never agreed that with me. Like, he just said to ESL, we're a package. And I was like, I mean, I told you, I've technically never said that. Like, we never made an agreement. And so then when they hired me back, it's like they didn't hire Richard. It's like, oh, well, sorry, Richard. See ya. I'm off to Cologne, mate. Peace. Thanks for all the loyalty in that.
Yeah, I was like,
that's just how things were.
They invited me to come to the event. And I'm like, Duncan, you know, I really do appreciate you, you know, sticking up for me. But, you know, I can't really.
Yeah, you can't say no. You can't say no. Of course not.
I can't really say no.
Exactly.
I was like, see ya.
Oh fuck!
There were some crazy fucking moments. I don't care. You know, I don't think Tom is gonna give a shit. But dude, he once like. I'll never forget the one time he had his AirPods in during a segment.
Holy shit!
Like, I was listening to like the sports or something.
No, he was in a meeting.
He was on a call.
Oh my god! Okay. What the fuck?
He was at a desk during a desk segment, and he was listening into like a corporate meeting at the same time. And like the host asked him a question, and he just like turned his head and stared blankly.
Oh, I forgot this is when he was at work for like JP Morgan or something mental, wasn't it? Yeah, exactly.
I don't know if it was either that or he was already in Immortals, like early on, you know. I'm not sure, but it's just Tom is like such a mental guy sometimes.
That's so ridiculous, isn't it?
It's just the blank stare where it's like, I have nothing to say, so I will not be saying a word at all. And you're like, oh, great, thanks, moving on.
By the way, I'll just make a point here. It sort of plays to my favour, but I think it's a good point. Doesn't that also show you, because I have a new theory, right? In the same way as I always say in video games, if you've ever played the game League of Legends, people say, oh, the people that play that game are so toxic. It's like, bro, it's like, daughter, the game is toxic. Like, it's such a frustrating experience. It makes you toxic. Like, the joke is, sometimes you play in a stack with your friends and you forget one of them's your mate. And you start typing like, what the fuck's the jungler doing? Oh, shit, that's actually my mate. Like, what the fuck? And you just realise, like, oh, what the game's just made me like that. Dude, that's what Twitter does to everyone. Because think about these people that we're going to list. Me, Tommy, Maui. On Twitter, we are the worst received people ever. We're the villains, piece of shit. In real life, all these people are chill as fuck in the fucking grid. They're just cool people to be around. Like, everyone's having a good time. No one's getting triggered off that shit. Just somehow Twitter just brings out, like, I think it just causes the most confusion in what you mean or something, you know.
No, of course not. And also, I always used to say this when people were like talking shit about you. I'm like, you do understand that his persona on social media and on the broadcast, and if you actually know him personally, are three different like types. You know, you're not getting the same level of everything, because people always loved when you're talking a lot of shit on Twitter, right? But you were always like fine on the desk. You never said outrageous shit. No. Like, if anything, you were always giving like people more praise and trying to like, come up with these like good ways to narrate the storylines, right? Like, which was really cool. But the problem is people can only see the one thing, and then they don't care. Then they painted a picture of you based on what they see on, let's say, social media. And then when they watch the broadcast, they're not even listening to what you're saying. They're just, here he is talking shit again. And you're just like praising one. They also,
I always thought people always didn't understand. I even like tailored it to the broadcast. Like, if you ever do look at when I came back to ESL, dude, I was mega professional. I don't think I ever swore once. Like, I just stuck to like cool angles, like you're saying, like a storyline, or I have like a player I'm going to like lay out a thing about why like Liquid's going to win the Grand Slam or something. Like, I was actually being super professional on those ones. People just remember the events where, like, a lot of the best moments was when it was just a clown show and we would just like fill in and people are in your ear, no one's in your ear. Events, yeah, exactly. Or the events where the comms speak to you in Russian or the wrong mic's open. Like, on those ones, you think, well, fuck it, I'm just going to say what I want.
That was a good one. Another Starlighter where it was like you, me, Maniac. I think Matt was hosting the desk, Sadokist.
Yeah.
And we started the segment and like you and me, our mics are off and we can't hear anything. And like the production is like 10 meters, 15 meters across from us, like set up in the open. And we're trying to, on talk back or Matt is talking on the broadcast. If production can just sort of, no one's reacting. And I take the headset off, walk away from the desk and like shout over like in basic Russian, hey guys, like, can you help us out? Something like that. And, then it starts working after like
hell of a lot better than giving you access to the entire audio at the desk of the event, which is it's a mental concept.
Here's what people don't know about that, though. That's why that was sick, because the problem is the only thing you all know from Counterpit 2 is the guy like, put your cans in the... That was just the event, mate. It was like a 2-day event in Croatia. And even though, by the way, Croatia's beautiful and we were having all the shavapis backstage, like the fucking banger kebab type food they have in Balkan area. Like, essentially, the tournament was just all right. Like, a couple of the games were good, but so many problems with production that, like, that's why Yanko was doing that way. He was just fucking with like the sound and bringing it down on Parler. Also, by the way, that I just learned in that time, that type of hosting wasn't for Parler. I don't know how he is now. That was years later. He did it again. But back then, I'm amazed he was so good in his like YouTube videos, because he wasn't really like that good at freestyling, to be fair, which is where at that era you had to be your strength as a host, because you don't know what problems are going to hit you. You don't know if you're going to have to fill.
That was the era of tech issues. You fill either like 20 minutes or 2 hours. You had never had any fucking idea.
Dude, I remember at that event in Serbia, the one where it was the fucking World Cup type thingamajig and everyone knows all the problems, right? One time, we had to do an insane fill where they said in his ear like 25 minutes or something. So Scoots just turns to me and goes, Thorin, could you just run through all of the changes that have happened in the French scene since the beginning of CSGO? And I have to go like, well, in very games, they started with like RPK and Kenny S, didn't they? And then they shifted to Screet. And it's like, I did a whole 10-minute thing. And it's like, that's how bad the fills were. That he just had to say like, can you just talk for 10 whole minutes, basically, without stopping? It's like, yeah, sure, Scott. But there we go. And at the end, the best thing about that event event, by the way, one of my favorite things ever was they had like a super old setup on all the sound and all the like boxes and shit. And basically, we could never get it good. But because Scoots is actually a veteran of production and done like real shit like the Olympics and stuff, he got like the box to be like 70% decent, like almost the right levels. And every time this fucking random guy from the crew would just walk up and start just like literally just twiddling knobs, like whoop, 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 whoop. And Scoots was going actually fucking mental, just going like, what the fuck? Stop touching that fucking box, man. Stop touching the box. Like, it was like the end of fucking 7 or something. Stop touching the box, man. What's in the box? Like, it's outrageous, mate. Because people don't know, but those were like wars back then, those events. You just survived them. You just tried to survive.
Those were the fucking trenches.
But everything, that's what, you guys don't know how professional we made those broadcasts look. Like, we were hurting inside. Dude, you know this, Janko. At PGL Stockholm, when we were in the studio in Romania, there was a whole segment where we had like a buzzing static sound in our ears. You know, like when you go to plug like a guitar into the amp, if you don't plug it in fully, it goes like, it was just doing that the whole time. The whole time we're like trying to signal like, the comms in the mic. I can't hear anyone. I know, we literally almost can't hear each other, Moses. We're just having to like lip read what people are saying and then just try and make points. And the worst thing is we just carry the segment and pretend there's nothing wrong.
Yep, or the fucking Russian conversations in your ears.
Oh, that's the worst. When they open the wrong channel up, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And you're like, please, could someone turn off the production mic? And they can't even understand what you're saying. So you just have to wait for them to realize it themselves.
Because you know the worst, yeah, exactly. You've nailed it. It's one thing if they did it accidentally for like 5 seconds. They would just leave the whole channel open until informed. So you're in the middle of talking. It's like, yeah, I actually think on map 2, it's like, like I can't. That's because if you don't know, guys, it does like sort of a circuit jamming thing in your head when somebody do that. Like imagine if you're talking and someone's right in your ear the whole time, like, just saying random things. You know, it's like blah, 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 blah. You'd be like, shut the fuck up, I can't think. But you're on broadcast. You have to pretend like. I'll speak a bit slower. Yeah, I think on train they might like you just wait for it to stop. Never stops as well. Never does, of course.
It never does. Boys, I hate to say it, I have 8 minutes left. If we not to derail the fun conversation, but I have to derail the fun conversation.
This should have just been the podcast.
Yeah,
just end there. Yeah.
We can't just end it there. We can just cut it off.
I said, like, I mean, this should have just been like this last part should have just been
reminiscing.
The whole fucking, yeah.
We'll do a reminiscing episode when CS:GO officially comes to an end.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, we'll get like Richard and Duncan on, and we can just go over the good old times.
Especially because here's the thing. We've told some stories on By the Numbers, but I also feel like there's got to be a statute of limitations. Like some of the shit from the really early days, those people aren't even in esports and we don't work with them. Like I feel like we can tell some of the more mad stories.
Yeah,
surely.
And even some of the ones with people who are still working at esports. I don't give a fuck.
Why not? Yeah. At this point.
All right.
Like you, Jason.
Yeah, like me. Dude, tell all my stories. I got no skeletons in my closet, baby. Wait.
Yeah, I'm not Steen.
Is that true?
I have a couple. All right. Well, that was episode 45. GG's.
Peace.